Chapter 10. Chains of Deduction. You know, I really hate it sometimes when we can't talk about what we learned in previous loops, Ron declared as the Hogwarts Express pulled out of King's Cross. It was his and Harry's first time experiencing this particular train ride. The twins were off plotting pranks, Percy was off being a prefect, and Ginny was hopefully making some friends among her classmates, leaving Ron alone with Harry, Hermione, and Neville in their own compartment. I know, Harry agreed. I wish I could have told Darby everything, got him to back off. It would have been easier. You managed to do it in the end, though, right? But remember what we learned under Polyjuice. We didn't learn anything, Hermione recalled, except not to mix Polyjuice and animal hairs. Not quite, Ron argued. Draco told us about his dad's secret collection of artifacts under the floor, and I was going to lie to Dad and tell him that I'd overheard Draco mention it in the hallway. And you couldn't, Neville finished. It was such a small thing, said Ron, and it wasn't Voldemort related, and I thought I might be able to slip it past if I had a convincing lie. It would be so much easier this year if we could just tell Dumbledore that it's a basilisk as soon as Mrs. Norris gets petrified, Harry said wistfully, before looking at Hermione to see her reaction. Honestly, I'm not going to flinch every time you mention that monstrosity, she said. Yes, it killed me. Hermione paused to take a deep breath. And yes, it was horribly painful, but it's been a year. I'll be fine, and when the time comes, I'll face it. We all managed 3 years, sitting in classes with Voldemort himself, just fine. We know you're strong, Hermione, said Neville, but your end was, well, worse than all of the other deaths we've had combined. Let's move on, Harry commanded. We'll face the basilisk when the time comes, or we won't. In the meanwhile, what can we actively do to deal with the chamber? I know we talked about monitoring Myrtle's loo, said Ron. But let's face it, for 3 of us, it would be downright creepy to sit around watching a girl's toilet, and I wouldn't want Hermione potentially having to confront the heir alone, whoever he is. I mean, I could, Hermione offered. We know roughly when the heir will be heading into the chamber. The worst case is that I learn the heir's identity and get killed and reset with the knowledge. Not quite, Neville countered. What if the heir is moving around under an invisibility cloak or a disillusionment charm? Besides, I'd rather like to make it to 3rd year this time around. What if we could monitor the entrance without being in danger? Like a security camera, Harry suggested. Just checking for people entering and exiting would be no good, Hermione said. Enough girls will risk using Myrtle's bathroom in a pinch that will have dozens of false positives every week. Besides, would we be monitoring for underage or mature magic? But the security camera idea has merit. Does a spell like that exist? Neville asked. We could make one, Ron suggested with a look at Hermione. Spellcrafting is a Newt-level topic, she said. But then again, we're starting Newt material this year anyway. Speaking of that, Harry asked, what subjects should we teach ourselves? I mean, do people really keep going in every class after owls? Not really, Ron answered. I know that Percy is taking 6, which really impressed Mum and Dad. Bill only took 5. We have all the time in the world, though, Neville argued. We don't have to learn everything in 2 years. We could take 3, 4, however many we need. Hermione contemplated Neville's suggestion. We could make that work. After all, learning things in depth is always better, and as you said, we have all the time in the world, and then some. What about practicals? Harry wondered. I mean, for herbology and care, we've only really been able to do theory since we started working ahead of the curriculum. For potions, we've been keeping ourselves safe enough with lots of safety charms, but I'd rather not start practicing human transfiguration on each other without supervision from an expert. Everyone paled as they remembered various horrific images of botched human transfigurations in their textbooks. All in favor of no human transfiguration until we can find a way to do it safely, Ron asked, and got 3 firm nods in response. Then we'll focus on theory this year and practice the less dangerous spells on the Newt curriculum, Hermione decided. I'll look at the syllabi for Newt history, astronomy, runes, and arithmancy. Do we have to? They're sobering, Ron groaned. Despite his distaste for those subjects, he'd managed to pass his Markowl in all four. Don't worry, Harry said. We can still practice our owl spells, and our dueling. We're still a long way from mastering either. And I might be able to wow Sprout into giving me access to some of the more interesting plants, now that she's known Bee for a year. It will at least finally give us some new practical work in herbology. They were unable to continue their conversation on academics due to an interruption from Draco Malfoy, who had come to bandy insults with the quartet as per usual. Knowing that his family was planning on unleashing a basilisk on the school gave the interaction a different flavor, but they could hardly dislike the boy more than they already did. Eventually, though, they managed to drive Malfoy off, and they prepared themselves to ride the carriages to their second year at Hogwarts. Ron wasn't wrong. Their theory-heavy learning schedule was horribly boring, and all three boys came close to calling it quits at one point or another. Hermione, however, was able to keep them on track. We'll need every bit of knowledge we can find if we're to ever figure out what caused this loop, she argued. And when we break it, and we will break it, all of us will be wiser and more knowledgeable than Dumbledore himself. The image of being able to stump Percy in academics was enough to keep Ron studying with a smile for a full 2 weeks before he needed encouragement again. One of the more useful things they were learning was how to create and modify spells. Their first collaborative creation was a selective notice-me-not that would stop Lockhart from calling on Harry to act out scenes from his silly books every class. Instead, the four of them were able to read actually useful books, while their classmates underwent the humiliation Harry was forced to shoulder alone the first time. The security camera spell was slower going, but they all hoped that they could finish it before Halloween. Time moved on, and their classmates and professors kept on recreating scenes they'd experienced once before. Sometimes, the people outside the loop seemed to them to be more like characters in a play, acting out the same script again and again despite slight changes in the set and backdrop. Even though it was only their second time through these events, they already knew everything that was going to happen. Harry easily beat out Cho Chang for the position of Ravenclaw Seeker, which caused Malfoy to buy his way onto the Slytherin Quidditch team, try to take over Ravenclaw's pitch time, and spit out racial slurs at Hermione. Snape taught poorly the same potions and spewed the same insults at the quartet despite their different sorting. McGonagall and Flitwick delivered the same lectures. The same mandrakes were particularly troublesome in Sprout's class. All in all, the first 2 months of their second year passed in the exact same way as they already had, only their ties were in a different color. Harry managed to avoid being invited to the Death Day party by Sir Nicholas. With all due respect to the ghost, he wasn't headless, and frankly shouldn't want to join the rather rude headless hunt anyway. Instead, the time-looping quartet actually got to enjoy a Hogwarts Halloween feast for the first time. They made sure to stay unobtrusive as the students departing the feast happened upon the petrified form of Mrs. Norris. Enemies of the air, beware. You'll be next, mudbloods. At least Draco Malfoy could be counted on to be a vocal bigot and a perfect distraction. Harry hoped he got to enjoy the full pleasure of being the suspected heir of Slytherin, seeing as he had no plans of attending Lockhart's stupid dueling club or speaking to any snakes where his fellow students could hear. The first Quidditch match of the loop was fun without being chased by Darby's bludger, especially since it was with an entirely different set of teammates and opponents. His Hufflepuff counterpart, Cedric Diggory, was rather good, and Harry was glad for the opportunity to face him. He still looked forward to flying circles around Malfoy's oh-so-superior Nimbus 2001 later in the year. Harry enjoyed the more sedate Ravenclaw victory party and hoped that poor Carlin Creevey wouldn't choose to go out that night. The next morning brought good news and bad news. The bad news was that a third-year Muggle-born housemate of his, by the name of Eddie Carmichael, had been petrified that night, ironically, while collecting materials to create fake protection amulets. The good news was that Hermione had finally finished creating the security camera spell while the house was partying. The spell would send a live image of the targeted area onto an enchanted parchment. Unfortunately, Hermione hadn't figured out to record images, so the parchment would have to be monitored 24/7, especially around the times that they knew the chamber would likely be opened. Harry made sure to stay genial with all of his classmates. The more he did that, the lower the chance he would ever be considered a possible heir of Slytherin. The quartet refused to attend the dueling club, which turned out to be the right choice all around. Since Harry wasn't there, Lockhart didn't insist on a demonstration duel involving him, so Draco never conjured the snake against him. Though Justin Finch-Fletchley was saved from the snake scare, he was still a potential victim of the basilisk, so Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville made sure to keep a very close eye on the security camera parchment. With each boy losing a third of their night as they traded the parchment between them, their advanced studying was put on hold in favor of getting some additional sleep when they could in the middle of the day. The cancellation of herbology signaled to Harry that it was time to find out the truth of the air. While Neville went to offer his help to Professor Sprout, Harry, Ron, and Hermione stayed in the Great Hall as they watched the live image of Myrtle's bathroom. The minutes ticked past slowly as they awaited a glimpse of the heir of Slytherin. They saw what might have been the tip of a wand at the edge of the image. And then the parchment went blank. "What went wrong?" Ron demanded. "The heir must have detected the spell and cancelled it," said Hermione morosely. "It's not your fault," Harry consoled her. "Of course, the heir would be careful. We still have Tom Riddle's diary coming our way soon if all else fails." Without the need to brew advanced potions, the rest of their term passed smoothly, with all of them except Ron taking the chance to go home. "I really hope I can spend some time with Ginny," the redhead said. "I feel like I've barely spent any real time with her since before our very first time on the Express. And when we were growing up, it was always the two of us since the twins had their own thing going on. You know, I've always been a little jealous of your family. Ron, you should never, ever take it for granted." Harry smiled as he remembered seeing his parents in the Mirror of Erist and the month he'd spent at the Burrow in a previous loop. He was headed back to the Grangers, who had once again agreed to host their daughter's orphaned best friend for the holiday. "Have a happy Christmas, mate." "You too, Ron." Christmas gave Harry time to refresh himself, time away from the perils, dangers, and intrigues of Hogwarts, and when he returned, it was with a single purpose: get Tom Riddle's diary, discover its secrets, and solve the mystery of the chamber. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious he became of the diary and its claims, for Hagrid would never, ever be the heir of Slytherin, would never send a basilisk to attack Hermione, which meant that the diary was covering for the real heir. Sure enough, Hermione trotted into their commandeered classroom one day in mid-January, with one nondescript black diary, retrieved from Moaning Myrtle's toilet. "We have the diary," Harry declared. "So now what do we do with it?" "We shouldn't write in it," said Neville. "It would just tell us the lie about Hagrid again, and besides, my Gran always told me to be wary of objects that can think for themselves." "If only we could get it to Dumbledore," Hermione murmured. All of them had said such things numerous times before. It would help them immensely if they could just tell the powerful wizard everything they knew. "Why couldn't we?" Ron asked. "The time for Delius," Harry reminded him needlessly, "but you have a way around it." "When I was trying to buy time against Voldemort," he said, "I was really just saying anything I could to keep him from killing me where I stood. And one of the things I brought up was the Mirror of the Erist." "But we had never gone near the mirror in that loop," Harry pointed out. "Exactly, but Yao had seen it in your visions, and I was thinking about that when I said it." I think that if there's a way for us to have found something out in this timeline, really any way whatsoever, we can use that to bypass the information block. What are you suggesting then? Neville asked. Harry, you heard the murderous Parseltongue hisses this time around, right? Of course, but I've done my best to avoid them. Well, you're hearing weird hissing voices that nobody else can. And could you tell us about the trip you took to the zoo on your cousin's birthday? Harry wondered for a moment why Ron wanted him to repeat the tale of the Brazilian boa constrictor, but then he realized that it needed to be told in Thistamline. He nodded in understanding and told an abbreviated version of the tale. All right, said Neville. Harry told us a funny story about some accidental magic, and we realized that he could be a Parselmouth, which we'd of course confirm. Hermione pulled out her wand and cast Serpensortia, allowing Harry to confirm that he was, indeed, a Parselmouth. And Salazar Slytherin would of course choose a snake as his monster, Hermione continued. So I took a trip to the library to look at a book on magical serpents, which of course I will do in a moment. And I'll realize that it might be a basilisk since everyone was looking at an indirect image. Mrs. Norris in the water, Carmichael through one of his stupid crystals, Finch Fletchley through a ghost. And when one of us finds a mysterious diary and very carefully writes in it, Tom Riddle will suspiciously try to incriminate Hagrid, so we'll decide to bring it to Dumbledore with our suspicions, Ron concluded. How do we figure out that the entrance is in Myrtle's bathroom? Harry wondered. Hermione thought for a moment. After we find out that the chamber was opened before, I'll look at old newspapers from 1943, which will reveal that a student named Myrtle died when the chamber was opened. I'll connect it to Moaning Myrtle and ask her again how she died. The plan was very, very complicated, in Harry's opinion, but hopefully it would work. If it didn't, then they would have just lost a little time. First, Harry talked with Tom Riddle and got his memory of accusing Hagrid. To make sure that nobody would end up petrified or dead, the quartet went to the library together. Ron and Neville checked around corners with mirrors, while Harry kept his ears open for even the slightest hiss. When they arrived, Hermione dove into a book on magical snakes before having her epiphany that it was a basilisk. Making a quick stop at Myrtle's bathroom, Hermione got the story out of her, completing their chain of faux deductions. To make sure they could reveal the information, Harry wrote down everything in a letter addressed to the headmaster. With the knowledge successfully written down, the four of them approached Professor Flitwick to ask for an appointment with the headmaster because they had happened upon a concerning artifact. The charms teacher personally escorted them to the headmaster's office immediately. They only hoped that Albus Dumbledore would be able to help them. Chapter 11. The Greatest Wizard Alive. Good afternoon, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, Mr. Longbottom, Miss Granger. Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts, the greatest wizard alive, greeted them. Professor Flitwick told me that you have found a concerning magical object. Yes, sir, Hermione began, for the first part of the story they were to tell was hers. I was using the girls' toilet on the second floor, Moaning Myrtle's, when I found a mysterious blank diary belonging to someone named Tom Riddle. As the quartet each piped in with their parts of the rehearsed story, Harry could see Dumbledore's expression grow more and more concerned. It was clear from his reaction that this Tom Riddle character was bad, bad news, maybe someone associated with the early Death Eaters. When Harry got to the part about his friends figuring out that he was a Parselmouth, Dumbledore's eyes widened. That is quite a surprising talent you possess, Mr. Potter, he said. Yes, sir, Harry agreed. I have no doubt that you found in your research that many in Britain consider it to be a dark talent, Dumbledore continued. But I have found that it is our choices, and not our abilities, that determine who we are. And that you have chosen to use your talent to help stop the heir speaks very well of you indeed. When the students finished explaining their theories, Dumbledore nodded gravely. I fear that your conclusions are most likely correct in every aspect, save one. What, sir? Hermione asked. I trust you will treat this information wisely. The four Ravenclaws nodded. For them, information was the most valuable thing, for material possessions would never carry over between loops, but knowledge lasted forever. You see, the diary of Tom Riddle is not merely covering for the actions of the heir. Tom Marvolo Riddle, I taught him as a boy long ago. He grew up in a Muggle orphanage and was sorted into Slytherin. He was powerful and brilliant, one of the most brilliant students to pass through these halls, but he had a heart of darkness. I suspected that, in fact, he was the heir of Slytherin in 1943. It made a lot of sense to Harry. They had suspected Tom Riddle to be at least an ally of the heir, if not the heir himself, since he had framed Hagrid for the opening of the chamber. I further believe that Riddle cursed this diary to possess the person who wrote in it and reopen the Chamber of Secrets. Is that even possible, Professor Dumbledore? Hermione asked. I've never heard of such a thing. That meant a whole lot more to Harry, Ron, and Neville than it did to the headmaster. After all, her reading consisted not just of the year and a half she'd spent in this loop, but a full 5.5 years. I would be concerned if you had, Miss Granger, for the magic used to create this diary is surely unspeakably dark. And I know it is well within Riddle's capabilities, for after his graduation, Riddle took on a different, far more well-known name. Dumbledore drew his pale, knobbed wand and used it to trace out the letters of the innocuous name Tom Marvolo Riddle in the air. With a flick, the letters rearranged themselves into a far more frightening phrase, I am Lord Voldemort. The four sat in stunned silence as they took in what the headmaster had just shown them. Neville was the first to break the silence, putting together the pieces. Voldemort was a Muggle-born, he questioned incredulously. The dark champion of the pureblood supremacists was a Muggle-born. A half-blood, actually, I believe, Dumbledore answered gently, as his mother descended from a long line of witches and wizards. But yes, those few who know the truth greatly appreciate the irony. Why didn't you tell everyone? Ron asked. A younger Hermione would have been scandalized by his rather rude tone and phrasing, but this Hermione knew that Ron's last sight before he died was Dumbledore arriving all too late, with the burrow lacking warning because of the old wizard's arbitrary choice to cut off Harry's owl post. Surely it would have made all his supporters turn against him. Alas, young Mr. Weasley, he said sagely, by the time I had determined the identity of Lord Voldemort, he had amassed too great a following and mystique. Yes, some might have believed me and turned against him, but many of his most loyal either already knew or would not have cared. He's not wrong, Harry muttered to his best friend as he recalled the fanatical devotion he had witnessed in his nightmare visions. Still, if revealing the truth could have converted even one supporter, saved even one life, Harry thought it would have been better to do so. Now, Dumbledore said, as he waved his wand around the diary on his desk, causing it be encased by a powerful golden bubble of magic. Even with the diary contained, the matter of the chamber must be dealt with swiftly. I think 50 points to each of you for your exceptional deductive skills and for finding a dangerous artifact. And Mr. Potter, since it is likely that opening the chamber will require your particular gift, I would ask that you accompany me, should you be willing. I'll come with you, Harry said immediately. Despite both Hermione's death and Neville's, Harry knew that so long as he stayed back and kept his eyes shut, he would be safe enough. And if he wasn't, well, then not even Dumbledore could kill the snake, and they would know to just let sleeping basilisks lie in the future. Harry gave Hermione a reassuring smile as he trailed after the gaudily dressed wizard, whose phoenix familiar had taken perch on his shoulder, while his three friends split off to return to Ravenclaw Tower. As he reached the door to Myrtle's loo, he steeled himself. It was time. I can't believe we're doing this, Neville said, splitting up, letting him go down to the chamber to face, well, painful death by snake fang, Hermione asked, not able to suppress her involuntary shudder. We agreed the basilisk has to be defeated. I wonder what was really up with the diary, Ron said, trying to distract himself from the thought of what his best mate was doing at the moment. If it made a wizard like Dumbledore worried, it's no simple cursed object. Next loop, we don't have to turn it into him, Neville pointed out, and we can study it on our own, very, very carefully, mind you. Hermione and Ron nodded in agreement. Neither were willing to take risks when it came to Voldemort, not when he had caused their deaths so many times. Now, who wants to hear about the spludiform equations? Hermione asked Mark eagerly. Neither Ron nor Neville really did, but letting Hermione lecture on advanced arithmancy was sure to take her mind off what was happening to Harry, and might just take their minds off it as well. Harry let the headmaster take the lead as he dealt with Moaning Myrtle and investigated the restroom for clues. Sure enough, after 5 minutes of searching, Dumbledore located the same carved snake on the ever-broken tap that they had located in the previous loop. "It seems I have located something, Mr. Potter," Dumbledore called, and Harry walked to where the old wizard was standing. "A crude carving of a serpent on this tap. If you could tell it to open." Harry screwed his face in concentration as he imagined the carving to wriggle and writhe like a real snake would. "Open," he hissed in the serpent language, and as he had witnessed once before, the wall opened to reveal a dark opening tunneling downward. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Potter," Dumbledore said. "I will take it from here." "But what if you need Parseltongue again?" Harry protested. Dumbledore frowned for a moment before nodding. "Very well," he relented. "You may come, but you must promise to stay behind me at all times and to obey my orders without question. Is that understood, Mr. Potter?" "Understood, Headmaster," Harry agreed. The aged wizard nimbly threw himself down the slide toward the Chamber of Secrets, with Harry following a few seconds later. By the time he landed, Dumbledore was already standing tall, his robes having been cleaned of the muck coating the slide. Neither wizard spoke a word as they trudged through the dank tunnel. Compared to his first time walking toward the chamber, Harry felt both safer and more vulnerable safe for having the wand of Albus Dumbledore defending him, but more vulnerable for being separated from his friends. The group spent nearly every waking minute together when in Hogwarts, and they never went into dangerous situations alone. The lack of Ron or Neville or Hermione having his back made him feel naked. Dumbledore looked intrigued at the sight of the gargantuan shed basilisk skin, but moved on after a minute or so of examining it. Shortly thereafter, the pair came upon the door to the chamber proper, which Harry opened with another burst of Parseltongue, resisting the urge to give Dumbledore an "I told you so." As expected, the chamber was empty when they arrived, and on Dumbledore's request, Harry closed his eyes firmly shut and called forth the basilisk, trying out several code phrases before ultimately hitting on the correct one, Slytherin. After that, he took 2 extra steps back and hoped that Dumbledore could defeat the ancient beast. In a burst of gentle heat and hopeful song, Dumbledore's phoenix, Fawkes, leapt from its master's shoulder and dove toward the basilisk. Striking once, striking twice, it clawed at the beast's yellow eyes, turning them to bloody empty sockets. "No," Harry heard the basilisk hiss, but Harry did not let his eyes open even a crack until he heard Dumbledore's confirmation. "You may open your eyes, Mr. Potter," he said calmly. "It has been blinded." As Harry allowed his eyelids to snap open, he bore witness to an epic scene. Dumbledore had conjured a massive fiery whip from his wand and had wrapped it around the basilisk's massive body. The writhing of the fearsome snake's powerful muscles did little against the force of the mighty wizard's magic. Pausing for a moment to gather its strength, the basilisk surged forward, breaking the fire whip and heading straight toward where Dumbledore was standing. But the headmaster merely flicked his wand, causing the stone of the chamber to rise up and stop it in its tracks. The sight of the powerful snake running headfirst into a wall was very slightly funny, though its angry hissing ruined the effect. "I will destroy you," it said in Parseltongue, "in the name of Salazar Slytherin and his heir." Thankfully, the basilisk's anger was being offset by something far more powerful, the hope and courage being sung by Fox as the phoenix soared toward Harry, ultimately settling into flying a circle about Harry's head. He was equivalence grateful for the phoenix's music and for its physical presence. Whether Dumbledore had asked Fox to defend him or Fox had chosen to do so of its own accord, Harry felt far safer with the powerful Firebird keeping watch over him. The battle had progressed further, with the basilisk looking far worse for the wear and Dumbledore looking hardly winded. The elder wizard waved his wand, and a hail of spikes rained down on the basilisk from every angle. Two of the spikes landed in the basilisk's right eye, and it reeled back in pain, reflexively opening its many-toothed maw. A single vibrantly yellow-orange bolt of magic lanced out from Dumbledore's wand to strike the basilisk in its throat. The basilisk shuddered, and convulsing once, twice, 3 times, it finally ceased moving, the ancient serpent laying dead at long last. After casting several spells to confirm that fact, Dumbledore's entire demeanor changed, going from alert and battle-ready to lethargic and weary in an instant. "I'm afraid," he said, "that I'm getting on a bit in age." "That was amazing, Headmaster," Harry exclaimed. He had never seen such an awe-inspiring display of magic before, not even his first impression of Diagon Alley. "Thank you, my boy," Dumbledore responded. "I may ask your help to deal with the remains later, but for now." Harry followed the victorious wizard back through the door to the chamber and toward Hogwarts. 4 things happened that year, which would have major impacts on events yet to come. The first thing that happened was when Dumbledore asked for Harry's help to access the chamber again. The pair visited the ancient dungeon over the course of several January and February weekends, sometimes accompanied by Professor Snape. Harry got to witness the intriguing, though often disgusting, process of how potions' ingredients were harvested from magical creatures. On their very first visit, Harry saw Dumbledore take an intact basilisk fang from the corpse with a grim smile, though he wouldn't remember this as significant for quite a while. The second thing that happened was when the quartet spotted a confrontation in the Ravenclaw common room. They didn't often spend time there, despite the private library which Hermione adored, because they didn't want people asking questions about why 4 second-years were studying Newt-level texts, even if they were Ravenclaws this time. Still, they would occasionally try to spend some time with their fellow students. On this particular day, it was Neville who noticed it first. A short, blonde girl, likely a first year, was being cornered by several older students, including Cho Chang. Cho had disliked Harry ever since he'd beaten her out for the spot of Ravenclaw Seeker earlier that fall. Honestly, if the quartet ever went into Ravenclaw again, he would just let her have the spot and fly on his own time for all the trouble she'd tried to start with him. The blonde girl looked on the verge of crying, but refused to let tears flow. Neville alerted his friends to what was happening, and a quick shared glance had them all standing up. Even if they were somewhat detached from their fellow students because of the time loop, they wouldn't stand by and let someone get bullied. They were Gryffindors, well, Ravenclaws at the moment, but Gryffindors first, and that meant standing up for what was right. "About your stupid noggles, loony," Harry heard one of Chang's companions, one Marietta Edgecombe, if Harry's memory of his housemates was correct, say in a mocking tone. "Maybe they'll help you find your earrings." "I'm afraid that's rather unlikely," the girl called Loony answered airily. "Perhaps." "Oh, shut up, you stupid," Chang began, only to turn, realizing that someone else was listening. "Go away, Potter," she ordered. "This is none of your business." "You're harassing one of our housemates," Harry retorted. The whole situation reminded Harry uncomfortably of how Dudley and his gang liked to corner Harry during their games of Harry hunting. Chang paused for a moment, considering whether she and her friends wanted to make a scene with the boy who lived and his friends. In the end, she shook her head, saying, "I'll leave you losers be, then," as she walked away. "Hello," Harry said, greeting the girl, who was now looking far happier with a smile. Even if he couldn't make friends with someone outside the loop, he could at least remember to show her kindness. "Hello, Harry Potter," she said back. "Hello, Ronald Weasley. Hello, Hermione Granger. Hello, Neville Longbottom. I'm glad I got to meet you this time around." Not once had anyone managed to discern that Harry and his friends were in a time loop. Not Dumbledore, not Voldemort, not any of their families. But somehow, this girl, who had never once met them before in any timeline, had managed it. "Oh," she said, ignoring the quartet's silence, "I should have introduced myself. I'm Luna Lovegood." "Hello, Luna," Ron manages to get out, the first one of the four to break his silence. "You were one of Ginny's friends and playmates before Hogwarts, weren't you?" "Before my mother died," Luna agreed. "I should have recognized you," Ron continued, "but it's been a while." "Over 6 years for you," said Luna. "So you know that?" Hermione asked. "That you're repeating the same time again and again," Luna finished for her. "Of course, it's obvious." "Nobody's figured it out, though," Neville explained. "Not even Dumbledore or Voldemort. We can't even tell anyone." "I've always known things," Luna revealed. "The blibbering humdingers tell me." "You must be some sort of seer," Hermione mused as the group of four, now expanded to 5, returned to their table. "How much do you know, Luna?" "I've known since I met you what was happening, what had happened in the years that never were. But I didn't live them." It took Harry a minute to parse what she had said. Somehow, she knew instinctively about previous loops despite having no personal memories of them. Maybe it was something that only made sense to the eccentric girl. "In the future, when the loops reset again," he wondered aloud, "will you have at least some recollection of any conversations we have, of the relationships you'll have with us?" "Of course I will," Luna answered with a smile, and for the first time in years, Harry was ready to make a new friend. The third thing that happened occurred in late March. The quartet were deep in their books, their new friend Luna off doing something on her own. Hermione was focusing on a parchment where she was running some calculations when she suddenly looked up with a smile. "It was my birthday a few days ago," she announced. Ron looked confused. "I thought your birthday was in September," he asked. Harry was quite sure that she had told them it was 19 September to be precise. "Oh, it is," Hermione said, "at least for my body. But when it comes to our mental ages, I added up the numbers on all our loops, and my 17th birthday was just a few days ago." "Happy birthday, then," Neville said. "But that's not what's so exciting," the lone girl of the group answered back. "You know the magical maturity spell, right?" Harry nodded and cast the simple spell at her. It would detect whether a witch or wizard's magical core was that of a child or an adult. Hermione briefly glowed yellow, indicating that she still counted as a child, magically. "What's so odd about that?" Harry asked. "You're only 13 still, no matter how many memories you may have." "True," Hermione countered, "but our magic is traveling back with us, too. We retain every bit of magical power we gain as we grow, and once our magic familiarizes itself with a spell in one loop, it never has to relearn it again. So my magic is 17 years old still, but it hasn't hardened. It still has the flexibility and capacity for growth that a child's does, and it will until we someday reach my real-time 17th birthday." Harry could easily realize the implications of this. So long as they looped back before their 6th year began, their magic would keep growing stronger and stronger like a child's. "Unlimited magic," Ron muttered. "That's how we'll do it. That's how we'll beat him." "It's not all upsides," Hermione informed them. "Some spells, like apparition or binding magical contracts, can damage cores that haven't hardened yet. That's why they're restricted to older wizards." Still, Harry thought, even if he wasn't going to be apparating any time soon, Hermione's discovery was a good one. Every spell he learned in this loop, every spell he cast, even would strengthen his magic, taking him one step closer to bridging the gap in power and experience between him and Voldemort. There was a bright light at the end of the long, long tunnel for him and his friends. The fourth thing that happened was when Arthur and Marley Weasley saw an advertisement in Thedley profit for a 700 galleon lottery. They decided to enter it on the off chance that they might win. When they did, well, what came next would shake the world. Chapter 12. The Prisoner of Azkaban. Moving even further into the future brought its own complications. For one, they had an entirely new set of end-of-year exams to take, even if said exams were hardly challenging for students currently studying postal material. For another, they had to choose their electives for the next year. The three boys chose care and divination, not, like many students, because they were considered the easiest electives, but because they were the two subjects which had significant practical components that they hadn't been able to handle on their own. Hermione, on the other hand, had signed up for every elective. "Are you sure that you'll be able to handle all that and are studying ahead?" Ron asked. "Are there even enough hours in the school day?" Neville added. "Don't worry," Hermione reassured them. "It'll be fine. Professor McGonagall assured me it was possible, and if my theory is right, I'll have more than enough time." The last and worst complication was a new summer at Privet Drive, one where Harry had absolutely no clue what new hells his relatives had planned for him. Aunt Marge is coming to visit. Well, Harry thought, that's not as bad as it could be. Then again, they could have decided to snap and burn my wand, so that's not saying much. At least he managed to wrangle a promise to sign his Hogsmeade permission form out of it, so long as he could manage to keep his cool. Given how Marge knew the best ways to get under Harry's skin, though, he wasn't optimistic. Still, Harry had some advantages. Regular phone calls with Hermione via pay phone, a space-expanded basket full of enough magically preserved meals to last him the summer, and one other thing, or rather one other person. Shortly after Dumbledore had slain the basilisk, Lucius Malfoy had stormed into the Great Hall, demanding proof that the Chamber of Secrets had actually been closed and the identity of the perpetrator. Accompanying the wizard aristocrat had been a very familiar figure, Darby, the house elf who had in two timelines tried to warn Harry of what was coming. While Dumbledore was offering to show Malfoy the corpse of the snake, Harry had conferred with his friends and devised a plan to free the abused magical servant. Working together, the four students had ultimately devised to conjure a rain of socks. Luckily, a few of the socks had landed on an outraged Lucius Malfoy, who had thrown the socks off of himself and into the hands of the eagerly awaiting Darby. Though Malfoy had been furious, he could do nothing. It was a matter of Hogwarts student discipline, and the headmaster was notoriously forgiving of pranks. Besides, even if he wasn't, who would suspect second years of performing conjuration, let alone such a massive one? Ultimately, Malfoy had stormed off after refusing Dumbledore's offer to view the basilisk corpse, and the quartet had been approached later that day by the newly freed and ecstatic house elf, who had been eager to meet the great Harry Potter, sir, Ron Weasley, sir, Neville Longbottom, sir, and Hermy Granger, ma'am. Though his eager demeanor could be grating sometimes, Harry was happy for the positive interactions the elf's occasional visits provided, especially in contrast to the Dursleys' perpetual disdain for him. Harry had asked Darby to avoid Privet Drive for the duration of Marge's visit. The little elf was quite protective of Harry and would not take her usual insults well. If he overheard one of them, then something very, very unfortunate would happen to her. Harry smirked at the thought and then reaffirmed his decision to have Darby stay away. One downside of his state of perpetually immature magic was that the trace would stay on until his real-time 17th birthday, which seemed decades away. Which, to be entirely fair, it very well could be. It was just 1 week, Harry thought. What could go wrong? To be fair to Harry, he had lasted 4 days. 4 days under Marge's constant verbal assault and Ripper the attack dog's constant physical assault. Harry swore that should he ever have to live through this summer again, he would find somewhere else, anywhere else to be for this week, Hogsmeade slip or no Hogsmeade slip. He had activated the enchantments to shrink his trunk and pocketed it as he'd stormed out of Privet Drive. Avoiding the creepy black dog that seemed to be watching him from the side of the road, Harry took off to the nearest Muggle bus stop. Though Hermione and her parents were already off on a month-long trip to France, Harry knew where their spare key was, and that they would be more than fine with him living there for the rest of break. He wouldn't have to worry about food thanks to already having a full summer supply, and the minimal upkeep necessary to keep the house pristine would hardly be an imposition for him. It was a perfect plan. The next afternoon, the Minister of Magic himself knocked on the Granger's door. Now, Harry had never met the man before in any loop, but Ron had spent quite a few hours telling them about his father's colleagues at the ministry, and the wizard's lime-green bowler hat was quite distinctive. The leader of Great Britain's magical populace had personally come to tell him off for running away and warn him that a dangerous killer was on the loose. Sirius Black, you-know-who's right-hand man, and the murderer of a dozen muggles with a single spell. The conversation that followed was challenging, but Harry ultimately convinced Fudge that he wouldn't return to Privet Drive this summer under any circumstances. While Harry had tried to argue in favor of staying at Hermione's, and Fudge tried to put him under aura guard in Diagon Alley, which was very stupid. After all, a dark wizard could easily blend in among other wizards. They eventually reached a compromise in the form of asking Augusta Longbottom to take him in until 1 September. The weeks Harry spent with the Longbottoms were not his favorite time outside of Hogwarts. That distinction went to Christmas at the Grangers, with the Burrow coming in close second. Still, it was 1,000 times better than the Dursleys, and he finally got to say he'd visited all of his closest friends' homes. As the summer drew to a close, the four friends reunited to shop for their new school supplies. They all concluded that Hagrid was mad for assigning a biting textbook. Hermione was talked out of buying the cat that was insistent on attacking Ron's rat. "Do you want Neville and I to be forced to take sides between you and Ron?" And Harry overheard that the ministry believed Harry to be Black's #1 target. Never had a school year gone south before it even began. When he collapsed from Dementor exposure, Harry regretted ever tempting fate by thinking that. They had an actually competent defense professor for once, which was a miracle. Not only had Professor Lupin managed to save Harry on the train with an amazing glowing spell that Hermione identified at the incredibly difficult Patronus charm, but he'd also proven his skill as a teacher from their very first class, a practical lesson against a boggart. That didn't go quite as well as it could have, seeing as 4 of the students had actually died more than once. Neville's boggart was a pair of glowing yellow basilisk eyes, which thankfully were not capable of killing or petrifying anyone, that he turned into balloons. Hermione's was a whole basilisk, which was not capable of killing anyone, but was capable of hissing out terrifying threats in Parseltongue. Ron, when he faced the immortal fear spirit, brought forth the form of Voldemort reborn, whom he had faced and been killed by so many loops ago. At that point, Professor Lupin stopped the lesson before Harry could face his own fear. Privately, Harry suspected that his boggart would actually be a Dementor, since those monstrosities that were guarding the school were utterly terrifying. The quartet weren't quite as close to Hagrid as they had been in earlier loops, though they always made sure to be friendly enough with him to be shown the dragon egg and be trusted to deal with it. They always found it hard to maintain a relationship when they had to start over from scratch every few years. Still, they were quite pleased that the massive man got his dream job of care of magical creatures professor after Professor Kettleburn retired. His first lesson, Hippogriffs, went beautifully. Hagrid was informative, everyone followed instructions, and the class got to interact with an awesome creature. It was unfortunate when they heard that the Gryffindor-Slytherin version of the class had ended with Draco Malfoy being an idiot and baiting the hippogriff, getting a nasty cut on his arm. After that, Hagrid refused to do anything interesting, spending over a month on flobberworms. Eventually, Harry had managed to talk Hagrid out of his funk, and the large man started teaching some more interesting creatures, though nothing as exciting as hippogriffs. It was a shame. The most interesting first class by far, however, was divination. Well, for some measures of interesting. The professor, one Sybil Trelawney, seemed to play into every stereotype of a fortune teller, and then some. She began the class by making a series of vague but ominous pronouncements. Her warning about Neville's Grand's health never did come true, but an ominous warning to Lavender Brown about 16 October apparently was spot on, according to the Hogwarts rumour mill. But perhaps the one true indication that Trelawney had more skill in prognostication than it seemed was what she read in Harry's teacup. "The Grim," she said in a frightened voice, pointing at a pair of vaguely dog-shaped blobs in the bottom of his teacup. "The Grim twice over. Oh dear, death is before you, and behind you." Now that, Harry, Ron, and Neville decided, was a surprisingly accurate statement, given that Harry had already died twice and would likely die again before the loops were over. Hermione, on the other hand, wasn't quite so convinced. She thought that the death behind Harry was Trelawney playing off of the events of Harry's infancy, when he became the boy who lived. As the school year continued onward, the quartet enjoyed the entirely new experiences, but didn't let up on their own studies. If they were to have any chance of getting out of the loop, they would need every bit of magical knowledge they could get their hands on. But even then, the Hogwarts library didn't have much about time magic, which is where Hermione came in. The night after their first day of classes, the quartet made their way to the classroom they had commandeered as their own private study room. Once there, they expected Hermione to pull out the schedule she had made for their studies this year. Instead, she reached into her robes and pulled out a necklace. It was a simple gold chain on which was set what appeared to be a tiny hourglass. "This," she explained, "is a time turner. It lets you travel into the past, body and mind, though it can only send you back a limited number of hours. Professor McGonagall gave it to me so I could take all my classes." Harry, Ron, and Neville all wore expressions of shock. "To take classes," Ron said at last. "Seriously." "After everything we've been through," Neville agreed. "It seems a little silly." "I know," Hermione said, "but it does present an opportunity." "It's the only other piece of time magic we've encountered," Harry realized, "so we should take the opportunity to study it." "Still, I'd be cautious," Neville warned. "If anything could kill us permanently, messing around with time magic just might be it." "Yes," Hermione agreed. "Terrible things happen to wizards who mess with time, or at least that's what Professor McGonagall told me when she handed this to me. Given, well, everything we've been through, I don't think any of us would disagree with that. Still, I don't want to be stuck reliving our Hogwarts years forever, so we kind of have to study this." "Very cautiously," Ron added. "Very cautiously," Hermione repeated in agreement. "Oh, and technically, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but with how we've been time traveling for years, well. Not to mention," Harry said, "we're long past having secrets from each other." The quartet used Hermione's time turner to great effect, both to learn about time magic and to help expand the amount of time they had available. After all, even if the homework they were completing was on things they'd learned years ago, they didn't want it to take away time from their more advanced magic studies. When Halloween arrived, they were quite anxious. Maybe, they thought, they might get to pass the holiday without something horrible happening. The day went smoothly, the feast was excellent, and they had almost made it back to Ravenclaw Tower to sleep when a shout from the head girl, Penelope Clearwater, stopped them in their tracks. They were too far back in the line to see what had happened, but the whispers reached them soon enough. The door to Ravenclaw had been marred with several vicious gouges. The nearby portraits reported on the culprit, one Sirius Black. The Great Hall sleepover was kind of fun, and Dumbledore's conjuration of hundreds of sleeping bags at once proved once again his immense magical power. But when morning came, the school had come to one conclusion. Sirius Black was after Harry and would stop at nothing to get him. The teachers and prefects started following him around for his own safety, which was annoying, especially given that he was quite sure he could take on one half-mad wizard who had just a knife. Besides, he would take his three friends as bodyguards over anyone bar Dumbledore himself. Harry at least managed to dissuade Professor Flitwick from stopping him from practicing Quidditch, which was fortunate when Draco Malfoy played up his hippogriff injury to get Slytherin out of playing in some truly horrible weather. Instead, the order of the opening matches was switched, with Ravenclaw Hufflepuff being played first. Harry had his friends enchant him with their best charms to protect him from the bitter cold and the torrential downpour, but it wasn't enough. The contest between him and Cedric Diggory, the Hufflepuff Seeker, would be decided not by their skill, but by who would by chance spot the golden snitch among the raindrops and mist. Harry tried not to let the dark omen of the Grim in the audience distract him. And then the Dementors showed up, and Harry fell, and his broomstick was broken. Seriously, was he incapable of having a Quidditch season free of drama? At Christmas, Harry got two gifts. The first, from Ron's twin brothers, was a map of Hogwarts that let him sneak into Hogsmeade. There, Harry learned that Sirius Black was in fact Harry's godfather and had betrayed his parents to their deaths. The second gift was a firebolt, the best, fastest, and most expensive broom on the market. Hermione's worry that it might be a cursed gift from Sirius Black proved unfounded. The charms to reassure them all that it probably wouldn't send Harry to a high-speed death were not beyond Hermione's capabilities at this point. Harry and Ron both enjoyed the excellent broomstick, while Neville and Hermione stayed with their feet firmly on the ground. As the winter term began, Harry began lessons with Professor Lupin to learn the Patronus charm, while Hermione started researching to help Hagrid defend the hippogriff that had scratched Draco Malfoy. Hermione came close to burning out a few times, but Ron managed to get her to use her time turner to make time for rest and fun as well. The disappearance of Ron's rat Scabbers made him sad, but the red-headed boy admitted that the rat was old and sick and would probably have died soon anyway. Harry struggled to learn the Patronus charm, though he managed it once against some Dementors at the Gryffindor-Ravenclaw match that were actually Slytherins in disguise. That night, Sirius Black managed to get past the Eagle door knocker and into Harry's dorm room, attacking Ron's bed curtains with his knife. After that, Flitwick decided to change the entrance temporarily to a password-based system, since Black clearly was cogent enough now to answer riddles. With Ravenclaw Tower now more secure, Harry slept far easier at night. Harry never did manage to reproduce his Patronus against the Boggart Dementor, which was disappointing, as was Hermione's failure to defend Buckbeak. Then again, the Malfoys easily had enough money and influence to buy the conviction of a single hippogriff, no matter what she might have done. The result, however, frustrated her enough that she flat-out quit divination a few weeks later. Harry really didn't blame her and was not going to choose the class again in future loops. The Quidditch final concluded, with Harry beating out Draco Malfoy for the snitch, winning Ravenclaw the cup. The academic finals were somewhat stressful, given that they hadn't taken the tests before, but all four of them managed to do well, at least until the divination exam. Harry was making up vague predictions as he stared into a crystal ball when Trelawney spoke. The voice that came from her mouth was not like her usual voice, but a pronouncement. It will happen tonight. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servants have been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servants shall break free and set forth for their master. The Dark Lord shall rise again and again and again, more terrible than ever before. Tonight, before midnight, the servants shall break free. Harry told his friends about what seemed to be a genuine prophecy from the mouth of the seer of questionable competence, but they hardly had time to contemplate it before the discovery of Scabbers alive in Hagrid's hut distracted them. After that, events proceeded quickly. Ron was dragged off by a Grim, and his three friends followed him. It took them a bit to figure out how to get beneath the Whomping Willow, But eventually, they decided just to protect themselves with shield charms as they dove into the tunnel to follow Ron and the dog. When they arrived at the end of the tunnel, which Hermione deduced was in fact the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade, they found not a wizard, a dog, and a rat, but three wizards. An injured Ron off to the side, and a furious-looking Sirius Black with Ron's wand pointed a short, light-haired man. Harry easily hit Black with a disarming charm, tossing his friend's wand back to him before pointing his own at the betrayer of his parents. Hermione and Neville, on the other hand, were focused on the unknown man. "Who is this?" Hermione asked. "Meet Peter Pettigrew, Harry," Sirius Black snarled, "the secret keeper and betrayer of your parents." While Neville healed Ron's injured leg, the red-haired wizard shared what had happened. After dragging Ron into the Shrieking Shack, Black had transformed from his dog form back into a wizard and used the wand he'd stolen to transform Scabbers into the supposed Pettigrew. Afterward, both Black and Pettigrew shared their stories, though Harry was inclined to believe Black for the simple fact that Pettigrew had hidden as his friend's pet for 12 years, which was creepy. Conferring with his friends, Harry decided to take both wizards back to the castle. Hopefully, Pettigrew's survival would get Black a trial, which apparently he hadn't gotten before, and let him fulfill his offer of giving Harry a home away from the Dursleys. Then the Dementors happened. The soul-sucking demons swarmed the six of them. Pettigrew turned into a rat and escaped in the confusion, while Harry drew his wand to defend them. Expecto Patronum, he tried to incant, but it was a failure. The Dementors grew closer and closer. One grabbed Harry as its hood fell away. Would he be protected from having his soul sucked out? Harry wondered. But soon enough he had his answer as the world shattered. Chapter 13. Exoneration. Has anyone seen a toad? Harry shivered as Hermione and Neville sat down in their compartment. The chill of the Dementors could not be so easily forgotten, not even by going back in time. Harry didn't think that they could have found a worse way to go than Hermione's death by basilisk venom, but Dementors were certainly up there. Meanwhile, Ron was looking at Scabbers in utter disgust. Knowing that the pet rat was actually a traitorous Death Eater in disguise, none of them were pleased to have spent years and years around him. "Well," Harry said, "that was unpleasant." "At least we know that it's not just death we're protected against," Neville said optimistically. "Our souls are protected too." "That is very good news," Hermione agreed. "It would have been rather unfortunate to get through everything we've done only to spend the rest of eternity in a Dementor's stomach." Harry shuddered again at Hermione's words. He was so utterly glad to have avoided that particular fate. "And even better," said Ron, "there's a way to get Harry out of Privet Drive. Blood wards or no blood wards, he's not going back there, not when there's another option." Harry smiled along with his friends. He would be glad to be rid of his aunt, uncle, and cousin, even if it meant being in a bit more danger. Danger was nothing new to him, after all. Hermione cast a silencing bubble around Scabbers. "Just to be sure," she said. "Time for Delius or no time for Delius. How are we going to reveal Scabbers? We'll need another deduction chain to explain ourselves." "What about that spell Black used to turn Pettigrew human again?" Harry suggested. "Did you hear an incantation, Ron?" "I didn't," he said sadly. "I think I read about that spell somewhere," Hermione said. "It's pretty advanced. Just to test whether someone is an animagus, on the other hand, should be easier. I'll have to look it up, though, and then we can test it on Scabbers." "Ravenclaw again for us?" Ron asked. "It certainly made it easier for us to do our own studying ahead, not to mention it will explain why we're so curious about that spell." "What about Hufflepuff or Slytherin?" Neville wondered. "We haven't done either yet." "Not Slytherin," Harry said firmly. "I'm not spending years in a dorm with Draco Malfoy. For that matter, can we skip the meeting with him in a few minutes?" "It's against the rules to lock compartment doors," Hermione muttered. "Oh, why not?" she said. "I could use a loop without that particular interaction." As for Hufflepuff, They're the House of Friendship, right? Ron asked. From what I've seen, Neville said. Yes. Well, Ron continued, I'm not sure we're able to make friends with people outside of the four of us. And Luna, Harry piped in. And Luna, which is another reason to go Ravenclaw, so she has some support from the start next year. Ravenclaw it is, Neville agreed, with Hermione and Harry both giving a thumbs up as well. Now, Hermione, what are we studying this year? Last year we did a focus on charms, runes, and arithmancy as we tried to figure out the time turner, which, let's face it, we didn't end up getting much out of. There's just too much about time magic that's unknown. This year, let's do Newt Transfiguration, though still no human transfiguration, because it's not worth the risk, along with some advanced defense theory, herbology, and potions. Neville perked up at the mention of herbology, which was still his favorite, while Harry was excited about defense, and Ron just smiled at the fact that the year was shaping up to be heavy on practical magic. Sure enough, within a few days, Harry, once more sorted Ravenclaw, overheard some third years talking about McGonagall demonstrating her cat form. He brought it up to his friends, who decided to ask the upperclassmen about a spell to determine if an animal was an animagus. Harry brought Hedwig, Neville brought Trevor, and Ron brought Scabbers as test subjects, with Ron volunteering Scabbers to go first. Thanks to Hermione's selective silencing spell and the time for Delius, the Rat Man had no clue what was coming. And when the sixth-year prefect shot the animagus detection spell at Scabbers, who glowed red, he was stunned, and Professor Flitwick was immediately called in. Oh my, he said, as he repeated the prefect's spell on the unconscious rat. You're right, this rat is an animagus. And he's been in my family for a decade, Ron said. Oh dear, Flitwick muttered. Let's see who you really are. The charms professor drew his wand and repeated the same wand movements that Ron had seen Sirius Black do 3 years from now and a few days ago. In a flash of light, the form of Scabbers twisted and expanded into one that only the 4-time travelers were expecting. Oddly enough, he looked distinctly more human than he had been in the Shrieking Shack. I guess 2 more years of living as a pet rat sent Pettigrew even further downhill, Harry realized. Nobody except Ron and his friends recognized the man, not even Flitwick, who had taught Pettigrew for 7 years. As Scabbers' owner, Ron was asked to follow Flitwick to the head's office, where the head of Ravenclaw informed Dumbledore of everything that had transpired. Ron tried not to flinch under Dumbledore's penetrating gaze, which briefly focused on him before turning to the animagus in his office. Merlin, Dumbledore breathed. He should be dead. You recognize this wizard, Albus. He is Peter Pettigrew, Filius, Dumbledore informed them. Peter Pettigrew was killed by Sirius Black, Flitwick protested. Are you sure? Mr. Pettigrew worked with me during the war, Dumbledore said. I rarely forget a face, and certainly not one of the Order. No, this is most certainly Pettigrew. Does this mean, Ron spoke up hesitantly, trying to maintain the image of being the meek firstie he was in body, that this Black is innocent? Dumbledore's gaze landed on him once again, lingering for far longer. Ron let himself lightly cower back, as an 11-year-old might in the face of a personal examination by the leader of the light. Perhaps, my boy, though Black's crimes were far greater than killing one man. Dumbledore strode over to his fireplace and threw a pinch of green powder in, activating the flue. Ministry of Magic, Department of Magical Law Enforcement, he called before sticking his head into the flames. Ron couldn't hear the conversation on the other side of the flue connection, but a few minutes later, Dumbledore withdrew his head, and an imposing witch strode out of the fireplace. Ron recognized her immediately. Amelia Bones was his father's boss, seeing as misuse of Muggle artifacts was a subunit of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. She was also highly respected for fighting on the side of the light in the last war and for being scrupulously fair in her job. Headmaster Dumbledore had clearly told her the basics of what was going on. for Bones quickly bound Pettigrew in magical chains before waking up with a simple "Enervate." "Hello, Mr. Pettigrew," Dumbledore addressed the rat animagus. "Madam Bones has some questions for you." "Are you Peter Pettigrew?" Bones asked sternly. "I am, ma'am," Pettigrew said nervously. "Now, Professor Flitwick turned you back to human from your rat animagus form," Bones said. "Would you care to explain why you were hiding as a Weasley family pet for the last 10 years?" "It was Sirius Black," Pettigrew said fearfully. "I knew he was coming for me. He tried to kill me that night, and I only barely escaped." Ron didn't try to hide his disgust at the rat man's self-serving lies, largely because it was competing for his continued disgust that a grown man had been sleeping in his and Percy's beds for his entire childhood. "Sirius Black was arrested and sent to Azkaban the very night he attacked you," said Bones. "While I understand that you feared for your life, Mr. Pettigrew, that you hid yourself as a child's pet does not speak well for you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take you in for more questioning." Bones took Pettigrew away through the flue, while Flitwick took Ron back to Ravenclaw Tower. Only when he was alone with his friends did he allow himself to smile. "The wheels are in motion," Ron said happily. "Hopefully, they'll review Black's case and give him a real trial that can exonerate him." "Let's hope so," Harry said. "And if they don't," Neville added, "then we'll just have to try again with more obvious hints. Maybe figure out a way to accidentally expose Pettigrew's dark mark." The next few days, the quartet kept their ears out for news, but nothing came. So Harry decided to distract himself by reaching out to a few friends that he hoped would remember him, starting by writing a letter. "Hello, Luna Lovegood. I'm hoping you remember me in some form or fashion, and that you're enjoying your last year before going to Hogwarts. Don't worry, you're not missing much this year, except some serious danger. Hopefully, we'll figure out a way to stop the Chamber of Secrets from ever opening in the first place, so you can have a smooth first year. Your friend, Harry Potter." The fact that he could write the letter at all was a good sign. Sharing what he'd written with his friends, they each added their own PS for the 10-year-old girl. Harry hoped that he would be able to continue building his friendship with the once and future Ravenclaw. "You know, while we're on the subject of other people who might remember," Hermione said, as they sent the letter off via Hedwig, "I was thinking. We know from Hedwig that magical barns echo back through the time loop." "Yep," Ron said. "Our brave girl remembers everything, including the one time she took out Voldemort's eye." "Well," Hermione said, "what is the other magical bond that we've made recently?" It took a minute for Harry to realize exactly what she meant, but when he did, his eyes lit up in joy. "Darby!" he exclaimed, and his elven friend immediately popped in. "Master Harry is remembering," the magical servant shouted. "And so did you," Harry said happily. "The world is shattering," Darby explained, "and then Darby is being back in bad former Master Malfoy's house. But Darby is having a bond with great Master Harry Potter and not bad masters now, so Darby is leaving stinky Malfoy's and waiting for Master Harry to call Darby." "Well," Harry said, "the four of us have been repeating time over and over for a while." The eccentric house. Elf listened eagerly as the friends related the tale of their time looping and their quest to be Voldemort. "I know I've asked you this before, Darby," Hermione said at the end of the tale, "but do you want to be free?" "Darby is saying before that he is wanting to be Harry Potter, Sir's elf," Darby said, clearly annoyed. Hermione had repeatedly tried to convince Darby to let himself be a free elf, and the elf had continuously rebuffed her. "But this time looping, it's been hard on us, not just the dying part, but having to live the same events again and again with only each other for support, and there's still no end to this in sight. If you let us free you, Darby, you can avoid all that. We'll even do our best to free you in every loop, so you don't have to stay with the Malfoys." "She's right, Darby," Harry added in. "This looping isn't something I'd wish on my worst enemy, and certainly not on one of my few friends. You don't have to stay with us, Darby." Darby is hearing, the elf answered. But Darby iscusinto do this, Harry Potter, sir. And Darby is being grateful to have that choice. Hermione nodded in understanding. Since meeting Darby, she'd been working on ideas to help the house elves once they were out of the loop and could make some real change. Thankfully, they'd managed to talk her out of the acronym SPEW, but she had been alienating Darby with some of her ideas. Missy Granger is getting it now, Darby said. She is fighting for the Elveses, but she must bear respecting the Elveses too. You're right, Darby, Hermione said, and I'm sorry, and I'm glad to have you with us. 2 days later, Harry was pleased to see Hedwig returning at breakfast mail call with a letter in his claws. But before he could open what he hoped was Luna's response, the hall fell silent as people opened their newspapers. It wasn't hard for Harry to sneak a look at one of his housemates' papers and read the headline that had caused the reaction. Peter Pettigrew alive a serious black innocent. New evidence in decade-old case. The article itself didn't tell them much that they didn't already know, only that the DMLE was looking into Sirius Black's case again and had discovered his lack of any trial whatsoever, public or secret. Meanwhile, the dark mark discovered on Pettigrew's arm and the lack thereof on Black's had called the entire story into question. Things were on track. The letter from Luna proved definitively that she remembered their interactions in the previous loop, for some value of remember. I look forward to seeing you again, she had written, and I'll be keeping an eye out for the diary, too. Hopefully, we can stop the heir in his tracks. Of course, she had also gone on for 2 paragraphs about some singer named Stubby Boardman, who was Sirius Black's real identity. She's mad, Ron said. We already knew that, Neville pointed out. And who's to say that we're entirely sane after all this time? See you in a few months, she had closed. Your friend, Luna Lovegood. P.S. Good luck with the troll. Luna's postscript had reminded them of something very important. That, despite the novelty created by their quest to exonerate Sirius Black, they still had their usual first-year tasks to complete. Sure enough, Halloween brought news that Sirius was finally going to go on trial and a mountain troll to knock out with its own club. After that, Harry avoided a mid-air assassination attempt by virtue of not being on the Quidditch team. Instead, November brought him a letter from the newly freed Sirius. Dear Harry, I know you've probably heard a lot about me in the papers over the last few months, but I thought I would write you now that I'm able to. My name is Sirius Black, and I'm your godfather. I was best friends with your father at Hogwarts, along with the rat Pettigrew and a wizard named Remus Lupin. We were all Gryffindors and huge pranksters. We called ourselves the Marauders. I've heard that you got sorted into Ravenclaw. You must be a bright one like your mother was. Nobody in our year could keep up with Lily in classes. I'm sorry I missed so much of your life, and I hope you'll let me be a part of it however I can, whether it's sharing stories of your parents, supporting you through your time at Hogwarts, or even giving you a home if you'd like. I'll be instant. Mungo's for a while to recover from my time with the Dementors, but I'd love it if you could visit over Christmas. Yours, Sirius Black. Harry's Christmas with the Grangers included a new addition to the agenda, a visit for Harry to St. Mungo's, Britain's wizarding hospital. Harry enjoyed getting to know his godfather for more than the few hectic minutes of accusations and revelations they'd had in the Shrieking Shack. One particular part of that conversation was very important to Harry's future plans. Are you disappointed, he asked his godfather, that I'm not a Gryffindor? No, kid, he'd said. My family was obsessively Slytherin. I was nearly disowned just for sorting Gryffindor. It's fine that you're a Ravenclaw. I'm not going to judge you on your house. Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, even Slytherin, you're James's son and my godson. Harry smiled. He wasn't sure that he'd ever willingly room with Draco Malfoy, but it was nice to hear that his godfather would support him unconditionally. After returning to school, the time travelers resumed their usual course, stealing the stone in early February and hiding it beneath Ron's mattress, smuggling Hagrid's dragon to Charlie's friends, and waiting up the whole night after exams just in case Quirrell decided to come after them. A flaring of pain in Harry's scar, and they were safe. Quirrell was dead, Voldemort fled, and the stone would soon be winging its way back to the Flamels, secure in Hedwig's claws. Sirius wrote Harry that despite being released from the hospital, he didn't have a home that was livable. He promised, however, that his house would be ready for Harry to spend the next Christmas break, and that Sirius would come by every week to spend time with Harry. With that promise, and with Darby no longer planning to stop Harry's mail, Harry was finally looking forward to a summer at Privet Drive. Chapter 14. The Tragedy of Regulus Black. "Boy," Uncle Vernon shouted furiously up the stairs, "your good father is here." "I'll be right down," Harry said. He put on his Muggle day clothes, which were actually new for once, thanks to Sirius, and his shoes, also new, and rushed down to the front door of number 4 Privet Drive, where Sirius was waiting. He was dressed, as usual, like a Muggle biker, with his flying motorcycle parked out front. Harry knew that Sirius wore those clothes just because of how much it scandalized the Dursleys to have a biker showing up at their front door every week. "They think I'm so low class," he had told Harry once, "but the Black family is richer than everyone on this street, combined, and then some. It's all blood money, though, and I'm quite glad to use as little of it as possible." Harry had learned that Sirius's childhood was as bad as his, if not worse. While he'd had a real bedroom instead of a cupboard, a luxurious one at that, he'd been subject to the unforgivable torture curse on a regular basis as a method of discipline. "I know what it's like to live with someone who hates you," Sirius had said to him. "Reggie, my brother Regulus, was the only one in that house with any hope, and even he ended up joining the Death Eaters and getting killed for it. No, even though Dumbledore told me about the protections on Privet Drive, I'm not going to force you to stay there. Instead, I'm going to spend the next year turning Grimmauld Place, my old family home, into the most heavily warded building in Britain outside of Hogwarts." "Thank you so much, Sirius," Harry had said gratefully. "It's what James and Lily would have wanted for you, to be loved. And in the meantime, I'll do my best to make this summer the best time you'll ever have at Privet Drive." And he had. Instead of his previous strategy of threatening them with his magic, which he couldn't legally use, Harry had used his ex-gone godfather to threaten the Dursley family into submission. He didn't bother to tell them, though, that Sirius was innocent. Innocent or not, Harry had to remind Sirius, after several of his worst stories of his time at Privet Drive, that it would not do for Sirius to be sent back to Azkaban for a crime he did commit. Sirius promised him that if he did anything against the Dursleys, he wouldn't get caught. "Where are we heading today?" Harry asked. Sirius showed up every Wednesday to take Harry out for the day to various locations, magical and Muggle. Previous trips had included the London Zoo, with no boa constrictors freed, Godric's Hollow. Harry appreciated being able to see his parents' graves for the first time in any loop, and a professional Quidditch match, pride of Portree beat the Appleby Arrows 372.50 in about 5 hours, though the final snitch chase was rather unimpressive. "We're going to an arcade," Sirius informed in. Like most of his experiences that summer, this was Harry's first trip to an arcade. Sirius had clearly been before, because he proved himself to be a beast at skee-ball and some of the older video games. Harry enjoyed winning at pinball machines and shooting games, and the two were fairly evenly matched at air hockey. At the end of the day, the two of them exhausted their supply of coins and left with 2 armfuls of cheesy prizes, taken home by Sirius for safekeeping, lest the Dursleys do something to them out of spite. After leaving the arcade, the godfather and godson got some ice cream, Harry going for chocolate while Sirius ordered mint, and enjoyed the sunny day. Taking the long route back to Privet Drive, not home anymore, never again home, on Sirius's motorbike, Harry returned to the Dursleys, care refreshed and ready for another week in Little Winging. "See you next week, kid," Sirius said with a wide grin and a pat on Harry's back. Looking forward to it, Sirius, Harry replied joyfully. Walking into the cookie-cutter suburban house, Harry went to the stove and pulled out a pot to make the Dursleys' dinner, the one chore he continued to do, largely since he kind of enjoyed it now that he was allowed to eat his fair share. For the first time in ages, Harry's compartment on the Hogwarts Express had not 4 students, but 5. Luna Lovegood was coming to Hogwarts. "Hello, Harry Potter," she said as she strode gracefully into the compartment. She was the third one to arrive, with Neville still absent and the Weasleys, of course, perennially late. "Hello, Hermione Granger." "Hello, Luna Lovegood," Harry responded. "Are you excited for your first year at Hogwarts?" "I am," she exclaimed. "I even already know what house the Hat is going to put me in." In some ways, Harry and his other friends were jealous of Luna. She got to be aware of the events of past iterations while still getting to experience events as they happened with a sense of novelty that Harry had long since lost. "You sure you won't be bored in your lessons?" Hermione asked, petting her new cat. She had finally gotten Crookshanks, the brilliant half-Kneazle who had realized the truth of Scabbers before anyone else, now that he wouldn't alert Pettigrew to any problems. "You're always welcome to join us." "No, thank you," Luna said as Neville opened the door and sat down. "I know as little about magic as any first year. I'm afraid my lessons are not one of the things I remember." Harry looked at his best female friend as she tried to make logical sense of Luna Lovegood, which was frankly impossible. "Oh, and hello, Neville Longbottom." "Hello, Luna, welcome to Hogwarts." The 4 friends conversed lightly as they waited for the Weasleys to arrive. Sure enough, it took until the train started moving for Ron to drag his trunk into their compartment, breathing heavily. "Hi, guys," Ron greeted as Harry helped lift the trunk into the luggage racks, and the others in the compartment echoed their greetings in return. "It's our 3rd time through this year," said Ron as he sat down. "Hopefully, we can find out who's being possessed by Tom Riddle's diaribe for January this time." "Actually," Luna spoke up, "I think I know." "Who?" Harry demanded. "Who is it?" "I think," Luna said, "that it's your sister." Though she didn't look at anyone particular, there was only one person in the compartment who had siblings. "Ginny, you think the heir is Ginny?" She came over to the rookery to play a few days ago, and she mentioned making a friend named Tom. Just in passing, but I thought I should tell you. Ron looked deep in thought. "I should have paid more attention," he muttered. She was sick and withdrawn her first year, both times far from her usual friendly self. But I was so wrapped up in our time looping that I didn't notice. "It's not your fault," Neville reassured him. "Your older brothers didn't notice. Neither did any of her teachers or her classmates." "But I'm the person who knows her best in the whole world," Ron said sadly, "and I didn't catch it." "It's still just a theory," Harry pointed out. "What do we do if Ginny really is the heir, if she really has the diary?" "I remember the first password of the year from when we were Gryffindors," Hermione said. "Damn," Neville muttered. "Your memory's amazing." Hermione blushed slightly at the compliment. "I can take Harry's cloak and sneak into Ginny's dorm, go through her things. It's an invasion of privacy, but if she really does have the diary, she'd thank us for it." Ron nodded. "Do that tonight," he ordered. "I don't want her to succumb any more than she already has." The next morning, 4 future-aware Ravenclaws, including the newly sorted Luna, woke up. Hermione, however, did not look like she'd gotten much sleep at all. In her hand was a familiar plain black diary. "Luna was right," she said softly, her voice filled with exhaustion. "I can feel it trying to get us to trust it," Ron said. "But now that I know what it really is, who really made it?" "It's foul," Luna snarled at the diary. "Even if you hadn't told me, I would have known." Harry looked at his friend appraisingly. She didn't even notice the compulsion that had snared nearly everyone else. "What should we do with it?" Neville asked. "I don't think that the mattress strategy will work again." Ron shuddered. Yeah, I'm not sure Voldemort's teenage diary will be quite as nice to sleep over than the source of infinite gold and eternal life. What about the chamber? Harry asked. The basilisk almost certainly hasn't been woken yet, and with the diary out of the picture, only Voldemort and I can access it as far as we know. All of his friends nodded enthusiastically. Leave it to rot, Ron said. We shouldn't leave it to be some future person's problem, Hermione pointed out. Ron argued, we can try to destroy it when we have the time. Besides, what are the chances this is the last loop? Voldemort is still out there, and we have no clue how he'll be coming back. That could be said of any loop, Harry pointed out. Better not to delay. Despite Harry's words, the time travelers made very little progress in dealing with the diary over the first term of the school year. They did, however, get to enjoy an entirely peaceful term. The only thing they really had to worry about was Gilderoy Lockhart's imbecilic teaching style, but they were used to bad defense lessons by now. Perhaps the highlight of their fall term was the first time they got to celebrate a Halloween without any problems whatsoever. No troll, no chamber, no break-in, absolutely nothing going wrong. Given everything they'd been through, Harry thought they'd earned the respite. Welcome, pup, to number 12 Grimmauld Place, Sirius said. As Harry stepped into the London townhouse where he and Padfoot would be spending their Christmas vacation, he eyed the entryway suspiciously. Say what you will about Privet Drive, but Petunia kept it, or rather, forced Harry to keep it, fastidiously clean. This place was quite the opposite. Bad Master Sirius has returned once more. A voice came out of a dark corner, causing Harry to jump in fright. Sirius, on the other hand, remained unfazed. Hello to you, too, creature, Sirius said sarcastically. The owner of the voice came into the light of the doorway, allowing Harry to see that, in fact, it was a house elf. Bad Master has brought his nasty half-blood godson, Creature muttered. Mistress would be so ashamed to see such filth in the ancient and noble house of Black. Shut up, Sirius ordered, and go clean. This house is still filthy. Harry could not imagine two elves more different than Darby and Creature, and yet both hated their masters, one clinging to the past, the other yearning for a better future. Sorry about that, said Sirius. That elf has been in the family for a long time, as obsessed with our purity and noble bloodline as my mother was, and be glad you're not meeting her. It took a fully qualified cursebreaker to get her portrait down from where she'd stuck it to the wall up here. Sirius led him throughout the house, giving him a basic tour of the main rooms, ending with the bedroom where Harry would be staying. Opening the door, Harry saw walls plastered with Gryffindor banners and Muggle posters. This was my room growing up, Sirius said. Feel free to change the Dacre. This is your room now, after all. I can take my Gryffindor pride elsewhere. Harry shook his head. Maybe over the summer when I've had time to think about it, he equivocated. In truth, he'd lived years in the Gryffindor dorms and still saw himself as a Gryffindor first and foremost. For now, I'll get unpacked, and then we can have dinner. I cooked something up earlier, Sirius said as he left Harry to his new room. Wouldn't trust Creature not to poison us. It won't be Hogwarts quality, but I think you'll enjoy it. Half an hour later, Harry was changed into more comfortable clothes and wandered down to the kitchen, where Sirius had two chairs sitting across a simple table from each other. As they ate their meal of steak, mashed potatoes, and peas, Harry told Sirius all about what he'd done since the start of the school year, leaving out only the things involving the diary. It was nice, Harry decided, to have the chance just to tell his parental figure about his time at school without worrying about anything crazy. The next day, Sirius and Harry got a visitor. Remus Lupin, not yet a professor but still a close friend of Sirius's, came over to visit for a few days. Despite the time for Delius, Harry made the not insignificant effort to avoid calling Lupin Professor, instead favoring the werewolf's marauder name of Moony. Both of the older wizards seemed to enjoy Harry calling them by the same names that James did, and so Sirius, was called Padfoot most of the time as well. Harry was quite pleased to give the two old friends time to catch up, particularly after witnessing the somewhat mentally scarring sight of the pair kissing each other rather intensely. Instead, Harry left them to their reunion and spent much of his time on his own. He finished his Christmas homework quickly, seeing as it was his third time completing the exact same assignments, and afterward proceeded to explore the house that had recently become his home. Sirius had warned him that while all of the rooms had been cleared of dangers, there might still be cursed objects lying around. So Harry always had his wand in his hand the first time he entered a room. 2 days after Christmas, Harry chose to explore the drawing room. The rather large room was notable for having numerous black family heirlooms on display. Harry admired the intricately done black family tapestry, even if he scowled at the sight of his godfather's name and image being burned off of it. He admired the various jewels and artifacts that the Black family had collected over the years. Even if many of them were dark, it was still impressive. Harry's eyes were drawn to one item in particular, a large golden locket adorned by the letters in emeralds. The design was captivating, Harry thought as he reached out to examine it more closely. He wondered where the Black family had gotten it, since any jewelry of theirs would more likely feature the letter B. Maybe the so was for Slytherin. Sirius had complained enough about how his mother had favored that Hogwarts house. Just as Harry grasped the locket, he was blasted back by a pulse of magic. Nasty half-blood shouldn't be touching things that don't belong to him, Creature growled. Harry shook his head sharply to clear it and realized that he'd been acting very strangely. Why had that locket captivated him so? It really wasn't anything special among the other things displayed here. What was that, Creature? Harry asked sharply, but the house elf ignored him. Must be putting Master Regulus's locket back where it belongs, Creature muttered. Harry liked to think that he was fairly strong-willed. He had managed, in the year and a half since almost getting kissed, to produce a Patronus when faced with a boggart Dementor. Spells with mental effects, like the Confunduser, a cheering charm, didn't affect him nearly as much as they did his friends, even when cast by the same person. Really, the only time he'd ever fallen under a compulsion was the diary that Voldemort himself had created. Sirius really needed to know about this locket. Making sure to knock loudly before entering the room, Harry strode with urgency into the sitting room. I need your help, Padfoot, Harry said quickly. What is it, kid? Sirius asked worriedly. Both he and Moony got up and drew their wands. I was in the drawing room, he explained, when I felt really drawn to a particular locket. I reached out and grabbed it when Creature blasted me back from it, which cleared my mind. He called it Regulus's. Damn elf, Sirius muttered, leaving cursed objects around for anyone to find. When they got to the drawing room, Harry pointed out the locket. Moony carefully levitated it out of its display and waved his wand to cast various detection spells on it. It's certainly dark, he reported, though I can't say any more than that. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Creature, Sirius barked, causing the elf to pop in angrily. I order you to tell me what this is. Master Regulus said Creature mustn't tell, the surly elf retorted. Regulus is dead. I am your master now, elf, Sirius near shouted. Master Regulus did order Creature to keep it a secret. He did, Creature rambled, and to destroy it, but Creature could not. The elf summoned the locket into his small hands as he continued to mutter. I order you, Sirius began to shout, but Harry interrupted him. Stop it, Padfoot, Harry said gently. Creature's clearly having a nervous breakdown. He's a worthless creature, Sirius retorted bitterly. Good for nothing but upholding outdated ideals and the word of my long-dead mother. Harry shook his head. Just let me try, he pleaded. Fine, but don't expect it to do anything. Creature, Harry said softly as he knelt to face the elf eye to eye. What exactly were your master's orders? Master Regulus ordered Creature to destroy the locket, and not to tell any of his family. Well, Harry reasoned, I'm not a black. I'm not Regulus's family. Neither is Moony. You can tell us, and maybe we can help you destroy it. Harry gestured for Sirius to leave the room. As soon as he did, the floodgates opened, and Creature's tale came pouring out. The Dark Lord Voldemort had demanded the temporary use of a house elf, and Regulus, being a young and loyal Death Eater, had volunteered Creature. Ordering him to obey all of Voldemort's commands and then return home, the Black family elf was forced to drink a basin as large as he was full of a dark, despair-inducing potion. Left to die by Voldemort, he had followed his orders and returned to Regulus. The youngest Black nursed his beloved elf back to health and sought to learn what had been done to Creature. He determined that the locket was something called a Horcrux, a piece of Voldemort's soul that, so long as it remained, would make him immortal. Returning to the cave, Regulus subjected himself to Voldemort's potion in order to retrieve the locket and exchange it with a fake. Too weak to return on his own, Regulus ordered Creature to take the locket back to Grimmauld Place, keep it a secret, and destroy it. Though Creature hated the thought of leaving his master to die, orders were orders. Creature tried for years to destroy the locket, using every method available to him. Every dangerous substance, every powerful spell that he knew failed to so much as scratch the thing, leaving him unable to carry out his favorite master's final orders. I promise you, Harry said, that we'll find a way to destroy it. And Harry suspected that the locket was not Voldemort's only Horcrux, because he knew about another object that was created by Voldemort, capable of mental compulsions, and even acted like it might contain a bit of his soul. It seemed he had found another piece of the puzzle of the diary. Chapter 15. The Hidden Enemy. The first thing Ron did, when Harry finished sharing what he'd learned over winter break, was to vomit. To be fair, the concept of splitting a soul, even Voldemort's, had made Harry nauseated when he'd first heard about it, and the fact that Ron's sister was directly involved with a soul piece undoubtedly made it worse for the red-haired boy. I really hope you're wrong, Ron said, because if Ginny was interacting with a part of Voldemort's bloody soul not once but 3 times, you can get to it before Ginny ever touches it next time, Neville pointed out. I mean, have you figured out where she got it? Ron nodded. We've known for ages it was Lucius Malfoy, the utter bastard. And the one time he interacted with Ginny at all that summer was when he fought my dad at Flourish and Blots. Probably slipped the diary into her school things in the mayhem. Sounds about right, Hermione said. The whole thing, really. From what little I've read about soul magic, and the amount the Hogwarts library has to say on the topic truly is tiny. The effects of the diary and the locket match up perfectly with what I'd imagine a soul piece to be like. Not that I could have imagined such a thing before today. It was good to hear the smartest person he knew confirm his suspicions. The other thing that Creature said that I think is really important is that Regulus said that Voldemort would be unkillable unless the Horcrux was destroyed, or Horcruxes plural in this case. Which explains how Voldemort survived the night your parents died, Neville said, and leaving Quirrell's body. And this means, Luna pointed out, that you can't put off trying to destroy the diary. We tried everything, Ron pointed out, and Creature tried everything and more. If the combined ingenuity and magic of 2 magical races couldn't scratch the thing, what could? There's Fiendfire, Hermione said. No, Neville shot back immediately. Just number Fiendfire is never an option. What's Fiendfire? Luna wondered aloud. It's a dark spell, Harry explained, having read an overview of the spell for his advanced defense against dark art studies. Incredibly destructive and incredibly hard to control. There are only 2 recorded instances of Fiendfire being stopped before burning its own caster alive, the Dark Lady Morgana Le Fay and Nicholas Flamel, who claimed that a controlled Fiendfire was a key step in the making of his Philosopher's Stone. Which, Ron added, given that one of those is a legendary figure whose stories have been exaggerated over the years, and the other was probably just lying to stop people from trying to copy his greatest achievement, means that Fiendfire should not be considered an option. Time loop reset, or no time loop reset. I thought that the magic of the Chamber of Secrets might contain it, Hermione argued. Still no, Harry said, shutting her down. We aren't doing the suicide spell. Agreed, Neville said. Agreed, Ron echoed. Hermione looked to the only other person in the room for support. You know how my mummy died, Luna said. I don't think I want you to be burned alive, even if the time loop lets you survive it. Hermione huffed. Fine, she grumbled. We'll find another way. But there aren't many things in the wizarding world as destructive as Fiendfire, and those things are incredibly rare. I wonder if Headmaster Dumbledore destroyed it last time, Neville said. I wish we'd asked. Harry, who had spent the most time with the headmaster in the previous loop, thought back to see if the old wizard had given any hints on the subject. And suddenly, he remembered one particular moment in the chamber that gave him an idea. I think I have an idea, Harry said, but you're not going to like it. It might be as bad as the Fiendfire. His friends looked at him warily. What is it? Asked Neville. One of the most destructive and rarest substances in the world is basilisk venom. And guess what's sleeping in a certain chamber beneath Hogwarts? His friends all stared at him. You're right, Hermione said eventually. We won't like it. But if Dumbledore could beat it, Ron said optimistically, so can we. It took them a full month to make their plan. Harry went over his recollection of Dumbledore's battle with the basilisk every night, writing down everything that he could recall, every spell from the headmaster's wand, and every writhing movement of the ancient snake. Hermione put their studies on pause, in favor of focusing on preparation for the assault on the basilisk. We have all the time in the world to read up on Newt-level theory, she had told them. But finding a way to destroy the Horcruxes is more important and more urgent. If this doesn't work, we'll have to resort to the Fiendfire strategy which, suicide spell or not, is our only other idea. Ron stopped challenging and beating their housemates at chess. Neville cut down his extracurricular time in the greenhouses to 0. Their change in behavior was enough that people noticed it despite the time Fidelius protecting their actions. Several of their prefects had wondered if they were all right or needed help, and even Professors Flitwick and McGonagall commented on the shift. And yet they persevered. The basilisk had taken their lives twice. It was the only obstacle that they had to resort to outside help to defeat, and it was the key to rendering Voldemort mortal. They would not let it beat them once more. In the first month back at Hogwarts, the quartet came up with and discarded 24 different plans, each one with some fatal flaw that one of them discovered. In the end, though, it was Luna who came up with the idea they needed to give them an edge. Dumbledore had Fawkes with him, she had said. Perhaps you need your own companion. That was when Harry decided to recruit Hedwig. Though the snowy owl was far from as powerful as Dumbledore's majestic, immortal Firebird, she had taken out Voldemort's eye once, many loops ago. She could do the same task twice more. It took a week or two for her to get used to flying blindfolded, but she quickly learned to locate targets by sound alone, avoid motions of the type that the basilisk was likely to make, indicate when she had punctured both eyeballs so that the wizards could fully join in. While Luna helped Harry train his familiar, his remaining friends worked to create gear to turn her into a battle owl, a small protective amulet that would go around her neck, and enchanted metal extensions for her claws. The former would give Hedwig a bit of extra defense against the basilisk, though it wouldn't stop the snake's attacks entirely. The latter would make it easier for Hedwig to pierce the snake's eyes. Halfway through February, just after Luna's birthday and Lockhart's butchering of Valentine's Day, they decided that they were finally ready. The sight of the 4 Ravenclaw students walking through the halls of Hogwarts on a Saturday morning was far from unusual. The sight of those students being accompanied by a snowy owl all looking deadly serious, was quite the source of gossip. Harry had no doubt that rumors would arise about what they were doing, and that none of them would come remotely close to the truth. Arriving at Myrtle's loo, they didn't bother to stop, except to give a brief hello to Myrtle, who, after months of them using her domain to get to the chamber, knew them quite well. "We're going to kill the monster that killed you," Harry told her. "Wonderful. If you die, you can feel free to share my stall," she offered, as she had the last 2 times he'd gone to fight Slytherin's monster. "Open," he hissed in perfect parcel tongue, and the wall slid open. He was the first one to slide down, carrying Hedwig in his arms, and he knew that his best friends would be following him shortly after. As soon as Ron landed, the 4 of them set off toward the chamber proper. "Are you ready, Hedwig?" Harry asked, as the owl received her metal claws from Hermione. Hedwig hooted once, though the tunnel made it echo oddly. A single hoot was their agreed-upon signal for yes. 2 hoots was no. 3 hoots was the destruction of the first eye, and 4 hoots was her signal for the destruction of both eyes. Ron put on Hedwig's protective amulet, and Neville wrapped the owl-sized blindfold around Hedwig's eyes. Hissing another open to bring them into the main chamber, Harry drew his wand and steeled himself. Beside him, his friends were putting on their blindfolds. "Positions," he ordered, and they fell into the agreed-upon formation. Harry would be on one knee at the front of the group in order to call the basilisk and to hold a powerful shield charm. Neville would be standing just behind him to his right, casting various sense-enhancing spells to alert them if the basilisk was approaching their position. If it did, then Hermione, who was kneeling to Harry's left, would help him stop it by transfiguring the chamber floor. Meanwhile, Ron, as the tallest of them, would shoot offensive spells over their heads to irritate the basilisk and drive it away. When he saw that his friends were in their places, Harry put on his own blindfold and hissed for the 3rd and final time in Parseltongue. "Slytherin, wake up, serpent of Slytherin. Come out. Enemies of the air are in the chamber." Half a minute later, Harry heard the giant snake slither toward him. "Why have I been awakened?" it asked. "Who are these enemies?" "Get her, Hedwig," Harry ordered, and his familiar hooted once. He heard the owl enter a dive, and the basilisk hissed in pain shortly thereafter, followed by 3 hoots. "The enemies are us," Harry taunted, "and you have been awakened to die." The second part of Hedwig's task proved to be much harder than the first. Slytherin's monster, no longer complacent, was moving rapidly to avoid the owl's strikes. Several times, Harry heard the basilisk hiss in pain, though Hedwig did not give her 4 hoots, indicating that the strike was not on the snake's remaining eye. Other times, Harry heard vicious snaps of the basilisk's jaw, though Hedwig always gave a single reassuring hoot after to let Harry know she was all right. "Incoming, right," Neville shouted, and Harry shifted his shield charm in that direction. Nearby, he could hear Hermione muttering the incantations for free transfiguration. Within seconds, he heard something shatter mightily, probably the beginnings of a stone wall created by Hermione's spells, followed by a heavy impact against his shield. Grunting in exertion, he held it as Ron shouted vicious curses from behind him. "Shifting left," Neville warned, and Harry braced himself for an impact on that part of his shield, but the impact never came. "My pillow got you," Hermione whispered victoriously before Neville shouted another warning, this time for a strike from above, and the basilisk's assault began again. As he weathered yet another impact, Harry heard the swoop of wings coming swiftly from above him, followed by 4 triumphant hoots. As agreed, Harry was the first to tear off his blindfold, and so he was the first to bear witness to the fact that the ancient serpent had no eyes, but instead 2 bloodied eye sockets. "The basilisk is blinded," he shouted. "All clear." Harry fell back tiredly as his friends moved forward. Though he yearned to continue the fight, he knew that he had done his part. "You took the brunt of its strikes," Ron reassured him, as he rushed forward spitting reductor curses to destroy the chamber floor in the basilisk's current path. Let us do our part. Harry watched his friends as they attacked in unison, their teamwork refined by over a month of dedicated practice. Neville and Ron were an unstoppable duo, with the plant lover holding a powerful shield charm over both of them, while Ron harried the snake with a continuous stream of spells. Meanwhile, Hermione was working on the grand finale, the same fire whip that Dumbledore had used in his battle. As Hermione fed more and more magic into the spell, the stream of fire elongated. Slashing her wand wildly, the whip wrapped around the basilisk, just as the headmasters had the last time. The battle was now a direct contest, the basilisk's physical strength and magical resistance against Hermione's magical power and willpower. If it was just that contest, then Harry knew Hermione would probably lose out to the thousand-year-old beast's raw power. Thankfully, Hermione had one more thing on her side: her friends. Neville, no longer constrained by the need to play defense, switched to attacking the basilisk. He did his best to aim for sensitive spots, the snake's destroyed eye sockets and its nose area in particular. Meanwhile, Ron summoned numerous smaller pieces of rubble before transfiguring them into metal spikes one by one. "I'm almost," Hermione grunted as she wrestled magically with the basilisk, almost losing it. "I believe in you," Harry shouted in encouragement as he readied his own wand once more. "You can hold on just one more minute." "Almost there," Ron agreed. "Ready, Nev." "Ready," Neville replied as he paused his attack, instead joining Ron in levitating the numerous spikes he prepared into the air, all pointing toward the enemy. "Now," Harry commanded. With one last exertion of will, Hermione jerked the snake into one wall of the chamber, causing cracks to appear in two of the pillars. With deadly precision, Ron and Neville banished the spikes at maximum speed toward the spots on the snake's skin where the flame whip had been in contact. Magical resistance, or no magical resistance, the continued burning had hurt it, and the impact of pointy, high-speed pieces of metal only made it worse. A few additional spikes landing in its eye sockets only compounded the pain it was feeling. The basilisk righted itself, but was angrier than ever before. It wanted to kill, and it wanted to kill no. Thankfully, it could smell a tasty morsel right in front of it, namely Harry himself. As the snake opened its lethal jaws, Harry shot the most powerful curse he knew straight into its open maw. The snake's momentum, though, was taking those teeth, filled with Horcrux-destroying, Hermione-killing venom, straight toward him. Thankfully, his friends were there, with shield charms from all three of them stopping it in its tracks. For a moment, the chamber was silent, and then all four of them broke out into raucous cheers. "We did it," Harry exclaimed. "We finally did it." "The snake is dead," Hermione said, "and good riddance." "Thanks for having my back there, Nev," Ron said. "It was my pleasure, Ron," Neville answered with a grin. "I can't believe we actually managed it." "One more enemy down," Ron shouted. "One more step closer to ending this loop, to defeating Voldemort." "Hear, hear," Harry cheered. "Now let's see if we got what we came for, a Kyogre." Tom Riddle's diary came flying into his hands a few seconds later. Levitating it towards the mouth of the now-dead basilisk, Harry pushed the diary up onto one of the snake's smaller fangs. The diary let loose a horrible scream and a powerful spurt of ink before falling utterly silent and inert. "I think it's gone," Hermione said. "We'll need Luna to check, of course, but—" "We did it," Neville shouted again. "We really did it." Suddenly, he sat down tiredly, laying on the chamber floor. Realizing their own exhaustion, the others quickly followed suit. "We really did it," Harry echoed more quietly, and the friends let loose another cheer. They were tired but high on their greatest victory yet. That was why they didn't turn to look when Hedwig hooted twice, and why they didn't notice 5 streaks of red light shooting toward them from the chamber's entrance. Harry was the third one to wake up. Hermione and Neville were already fully awake and glaring at their captor, while Ron and Hedwig were still out of it. Turning his attention from the immediate condition of his friends and familiar, Harry evaluated the situation in more detail. Hedwig was unlikely to wake up from the stunner that hit her any time soon, and the four humans had their wands taken and their hands tied behind their backs by some sort of fabric. They were clearly still in the chamber, as the corpse of the basilisk he had killed was still in his vision some distance away. And sitting opposite them with a triumphant expression on his face, in all his perfectly coiffed glory, was Professor Gilderoy Lockhart. "What?" Ron moaned as his eyes opened. "What's going on?" Harry saw his first friend's eyes quickly take in the situation, just as Harry himself had. "Wait, Professor Lockhart." "Yes, it is me, Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award, professor of defense at the renowned Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and now defeater of the feared monster of Slytherin, who abducted Harry Potter and 3 of his friends into the Chamber of Secrets." "What?" Hermione demanded. "We all know that you had nothing to do with it, and what's this about us being abducted?" "Ah, Miss Granger, so brilliant, a true Ravenclaw like myself, but you can't see the obvious. After all, in a few minutes, the only witness who remembers these events will be me, and I will, of course, tell the story in a way that demonstrates my own heroism." "You're a fraud," Ron accused. "You never did a single thing that you claimed credit for." "Such harsh language, Mr. Weasley," Lockhart said, "but perhaps accurate. You see, I never was much good at magic, save for one thing, I was always excellent at memory charms. And so I began to wander the world, seeking out those who had defeated powerful creatures, listening to their stories, and then embellishing them a little. A quick obliviate, and there's nobody to say that it didn't defeat the Band and Banshee. And honestly, the witch who did had a harelip, who'd want to see her own the cover of a book. So that's why you're so obsessed with fame," Harry spat, "because you can't be bothered to get anything actually meaningful." "Ah, Harry, 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 I was so disappointed in you. You got more fame as an infant than most will see in their lifetimes, and you refused to use it." "I got that fame when my parents were murdered," he shot back, but Lockhart ignored him. "I came to Hogwarts hoping that I could work with you. A joint adventure of Gilderoy Lockhart and the Boy Who Lived would sell thousands of copies. Everyone would want to buy one. But you ignored me, and so I had to find another way to make my year here worthwhile. I thought making every student buy your entire bibliography did that," Hermione snarked back. The 4 friends, despite their predicament, still couldn't quite find it in themselves to see Gilderoy Lockhart as a threat. "Galleons are nice," Lockhart said, "but fame's far more valuable. When I heard rumors that you and your group were acting oddly, I thought, perhaps now is the chance. Perhaps the Boy Who Lived is going on a quest that I can join in, or plotting some secret deed that I can stop. Fame is fickle, after all, and if I provided enough evidence, all those who love you would turn on your name and your fame in an instant. Your skill with talking to snakes, for instance. Ah, and here I am blathering on. I have a story to share and a scene to set. Maybe I'll go with the boy who spoke to snakes, turned on his friends, and brought them to his secret lair. And the bold Gilderoy Lockhart single-handedly stopped him and his beast. Would you really incriminate a 12-year-old just to sell a book?" Neville asked, trying to reach the man's atrophied conscience. "I've done worse," Lockhart admitted. "Now I believe it is time. Obliviate Maxima." The light of the memory-erasing spell raced toward the group of 4 students, but it did not reach them. For the world shattered. Chapter 16. Entr'acte, Marauding. "Has anyone— oh, come on," Hermione exclaimed as she went through her usual routine of locking and silencing the compartment door behind her and Neville. "You have got to be kidding me. Lockhart, of all people. Really?" "Seriously," Ron agreed as he cast a silencing charm around Scabbers. "Does everybody have some dark secret that's going to come back and bite us? I mean, Quirrell is Voldemort, Lockhart is a memory-erasing fraud, Lupin is a werewolf, Black had a Death Eater brother. who was actually heroic and helpful to us, Harry pointed out. And even though Dumbledore may have helped us once, he also killed Ron by forcing me to cut off contact that one summer. At least Luna is exactly what she appears to be, Neville said. I need a break, said Ron. I mean, I know that I agreed to the studying ahead back when we were on our do-nothing loop, but I'm tired. So tired of living through the same years only to be sent back because the world throws another challenge at us. The quartet took a moment just to exist, in the place and time that was their anchor through the numerous iterations of their lives. No matter what, they would return here, 4 friends together on the train to their first year at Hogwarts. We need a break, Neville said eventually. We take plenty of breaks, Hermione protested. I've gotten much better about putting limits on our studying since we started this. You have gotten better, Ron agreed, but I don't think that's what Neville means. You're right, said Neville. I mean that we've been living every loop as if I could be our last. We've been pushing forward to solve problems, to find a way out. But it's clear by now that the time loop isn't ending any time soon. If you could do anything you wanted to do, with no consequences, what would it be? I'd learn something just for fun, Hermione said. Something that has no use whatsoever. I remember when Dudley spent about a week trying to learn to juggle, Harry recalled. He was hilariously bad at it, but I wouldn't mind figuring it out for myself. I'd get in a prank war with the twins, said Ron. They're good, but between the 4 of us, I think we could be better. My dad and Sirius and Remus and the rat were part of the Marauders, Harry remembered. The greatest pranksters ever to walk the halls of Hogwarts, and I wouldn't mind living up to their legacy. Why not? Said Neville. It might be fun. The 3 boys turned to Hermione, who had remained silent on the subject of pranking thus far. Fine, she relented. I'll help you. The new Marauders forever, or something like that. You know, said Harry, we don't have to restrict our pranking to the twins. We could prank the teachers too, even Quirrell. You want to prank Voldemort, the Dark Lord? Neville questioned. Are you serious? Hermione added, horrified. No, Harry joked. That's my godfather. But I figured we're going to need to end this loop somehow. And what better way than pranking Voldemort into murdering us? His 3 friends stared at him incredulously. It would be the greatest prank in the history of pranks, Harry argued. Ah, Hermione said. Why the hell not? I even have my first prank idea ready right now, Harry said. Unlock the door before Malfoy comes and play along. Hermione did as he asked, and a few minutes later, Draco Malfoy and his goons burst into the compartment. Is it true? The annoying boy said. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? No, Harry said. My name is Archie Weasley, and this is my twin brother, Ron, and our new friends, Hermione Granger and Neville Longbottom. Draco looked between Harry and Ron. You have black hair and green eyes, and the scar, you're Harry Potter. He wishes, Ron complained. My brother ice-obsessed with the boy who lived, worse than my sister, even. He dyes his hair black and paints the stupid scar on his forehead and even makes his eyes green with some muggle thing called color contacts. But no, we're twins. I thought you would have known about Archie, Neville piped in. My gran made me memorize every pureblood child that was going to be in my year, all the way from Sue Bones down to the younger Weasley twins, Ronald and Archibald. I didn't believe they were twins at first, either, commented Hermione, but they really are in sync. Twins they may not have been in real life, but they had been close friends for years, and so they were able to look at each other and turn to nod at Draco, all in perfect unison. We really are able to, Harry began. Finish each other's sentences, Ron ended smoothly. It's really useful. At annoying Mum, and we're even better at it than Fred and George are, which is saying something. Stop, stop, Draco yelled. Fine, you're Ron's twin, whom I've never heard of in my life. I'm going to go find Harry Potter, who's probably as far as possible from you idiots." The compartment door slammed behind the three future Slytherins, and the quartet were silent for 15 seconds before breaking out into laughter. "Thanks for going with that, Ron," Harry said, unable to break the giant smile that was on his face. "I haven't had that much fun in a while." "I can't believe you actually convinced him that the two of you were twins," Hermione said between spurts of laughter. "You look absolutely nothing alike, even ignoring hair color." "If we're really doing this," Neville said, "let's head back to Gryffindor. They have the greatest tolerance for antics. Not to mention access to the twins' beds," Ron crowed. "I thought we were the twins," said Harry, and their compartment erupted into laughter again. When they got to the boats, Hagrid greeted Harry by his name, causing Draco to sputter and Harry to wink at him. "I thought you were named Archie Weasley," he said. "I'm not sure why you would think that," Ron said with a straight face. "The only twins in my family are my older brothers." Hagrid shook his head with a fond smile as the first years rowed the boats to Hogwarts. Little Harry was clearly just like his father. Merlin helped them all. Harry was glad to be back in Gryffindor Tower. Ravenclaw was nice, but nothing quite beat the warmth of the House of the Brave, which was, and always would be, the first place he felt at home. While the rest of their yearmates were settling in for an early bedtime after an exhausting and exciting day, the four-time travelers held a conference on how they planned to wage war on Fred and George. Harry knew that they held a major advantage, the Marauders' map, but the quartet had a numerical advantage and far more skill and experience with magic, even if they hadn't ever turned it to pranking before. Their opening strike came on the first day of classes at breakfast, a simple spell to turn the twins' hair bright blue, like Harry had accidentally done once to an annoying teacher in elementary school. The second morning, they transfigured the twins' Hogwarts robes into pink tutus with sparkly tops, and so on and so on, minor pranks culminating with the seventh morning of pranking, which involved making them crow like a rooster whenever they opened their mouths to speak. And with this final prank came a message, written above their heads in magically sparkling letters. "The Roosters challenge, you for the prank crown of Hogwarts prepared." The rooster's name was Hermione's idea, because unlike the actual things, we managed to take down a basilisk, she reasoned. Besides, it's completely unconnected to us, not like calling ourselves the Marauders, heirs, or something would be. Out of class, they continued to prosecute a prank war against the twins, who had no clue who the Roosters were. They responded with massive spectacles that pranked entire houses. The quartet even got caught up in a few, but the Roosters' responses were always aimed at the twins and nobody else. In classes, the quartet took on slight variations of their original personas. Ron mostly played the lazy kid, though when it came to homework and tests, he scored E's. Any less would be an embarrassment for someone who had done the same assignments a half-dozen times prior. Neville acted shy, though not nearly as bad as he had been for real. Hermione played the swot wonderfully, for it was her fundamental nature, and Harry was polite and curious and a very small bit adventurous as he explored the magical world for the first time. In particular, they made sure to show themselves average at practical magic, so that absolutely no one would suspect them. Well, with some exceptions. In potions, Harry used all of the brewing theory that he had acquired to mess up in the most spectacular ways possible. Maybe Snape suspected something, but how would anyone suspect a mediocre student of knowing exactly the right way to do the potion wrong every single time? And in defense, whenever Quirrell's back was turned, they played subtle pranks. Not much, just moving an item here or causing a weird noise there or sending a minor jinx at his turban, but enough to annoy the possessed professor and his tag-along, and always in a way that the only evidence that could accuse them was Voldemort's testimony. And like that, they continued for the first 2 months of school, barring the usual charade to reveal Scabbers as Pettigrew. When Sirius got exonerated, Harry knew that he would love that his godson was becoming a prank master. One day in mid-October, Harry had a ball in his hands. It was a small and made of red rubber, and he kept tossing it quickly from his left hand to his right, and then up in a high arc back to his left. He did this almost constantly, only stopping to eat, sleep, and go to classes. Only Harry and his friends knew what he was doing or why, leaving the rest of the school mystified. A few days later, he added a second ball to the pattern, which involved a whole lot more dropped balls until he got the hang of it. When anyone asked what he was doing, he replied that it was practice for a secret magical technique. Being the boy who lived, a good chunk of the school believed it. By the time the quartet were walking near a certain bathroom to await the Halloween troll, Harry was able to maintain a consistent three-ball pattern for several minutes, proving the hand-eye coordination that made him such a skilled seeker. When they encountered the troll, Hermione transfigured the balls mid-flight into heavy lead and banished them swiftly into the troll's cranium, knocking it back hard. Harry summoned the balls back again with his wand and passed them to his friends to continue the barrage. 30 seconds later, the troll was unconscious due to repeated blunt impacts to the head. Hermione transfigured the lead balls back into rubber, where they laid until the teachers rushed in. "It was amazing," Hermione exclaimed. "Harry's juggling balls that defeated the troll." "Harry told you that they were a secret boy-who-lived magical technique," Ron replied. "But you didn't believe me." Professor McGonagall stared at them. "Why?" she sighed, exasperated. "Why what, ma'am?" Neville asked politely. "Why were you not at the feast, for one?" Professor Snape demanded. "I wanted to practice my juggling," said Harry, as he smiled beatifically. Somehow, they managed to get out of there with 3 juggling balls and no points lost. Harry juggled all the way back to their dorms, holding in his laughter all the while. The school got used to Harry's juggling obsession quickly, all things considered, although that might have been because they kept getting distracted by the escalating Roosters Weasley twins prank war. When the twins charmed snowballs to bounce off the back of Quirrell's head, that is, off of Voldemort's face, the time travelers did nothing except a subtle charm to make the impacts harder and the cold linger longer. When Harry went to visit Sirius in St. Mungo's again, his godfather laughed out loud at the stories Harry shared of his antics, and those were just the tamer ones. On their return to Hogwarts, the quartet escalated their attacks on Quirrellmort. Hermione had spent the break researching voice-producing charms. On their third defense class, a whisper sounded from nowhere and everywhere, "Tom Riddle." Quirrell looked around wildly, trying to figure out who spoke, but the voice did not come from any student's mouth. The next class, the whisper repeated, "Tom Riddle, we see you." The class after that, it was, "We know who you are, Tom Riddle." And so on and so on, every day a new message aimed at upsetting Voldemort's sanity. Occasionally, Harry would wink at Quirrell's turban as the voice sounded. He was determined to prank Voldemort into a murderous rage before the year was up, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, Hermione was busy with some transfiguration project that involved a lot of mechanical parts. She refused to explain what she was doing, only that it would be hilarious. "Should we bother stealing the stone?" Neville asked at one point in February, "just in case." "Sure," Ron replied, "but let's have some fun." And so all 4 of them went down through the trapdoor. While Fluffy was sleeping, they dyed the hair on the left head pink, the middle head green, and the right head bright blue. The devil's snare they left beyond Neville's insistence, but they spent hours transfiguring all of the wings on the flying keys into pretty butterfly wings. McGonagall's chess game, while a masterpiece of transfiguration and animation, was well within the power of the quartet to obliterate. Instead, they replaced it with a giant game of Go. A few years ago, Ron had gotten bored of playing chess and had learned the difficult Asian strategy game. Even if he wasn't very good at it, Ron knew that a Go game took hundreds of moves to complete, and any attempt to bypass the new defense would result in the invader being pelted by dozens of flying, giant ghost stones. In the next room, Harry and Ron held off the troll, while Hermione and Neville dressed it in a green and orange tutu that was charmed to prevent the troll from damaging or dirtying it. They took Professor Snape's obstacle and upgraded it by replacing the poisons with prank potions and replacing the riddle with a new, far more challenging one that Hermione had written. The witch was an avid solver of logic grid puzzles, and the one she had created was apparently an intermediate-level puzzle. Harry couldn't even figure out how to begin. The Mirror of Eris they left be, not wanting to mess with that particular piece of ancient, powerful magic. Instead, they took the stone and left a simple note tacked on the mirror. "Joke's on you, Tom Riddle," signed Harry Potter. If Quirrell did come through the challenges, he would be quite surprised at what he found. "Tom Riddle, beware the one who destroyed you once before." The campaign to spook Voldemort had intensified, with the ominous voices following Professor Quirrell and his tag-along around the school, not just in Harry's defense classes. Harry also set up pranks to douse Quirrell's turban in various potions, ranging from annoying to painful, including one to induce boils and one to cause confusion. One day, Hermione was absent from dinner in the Great Hall, at least at first. Suddenly, a high-pitched bell rang out from outside the Great Hall's doors, which opened slightly of their own accord to admit an unusual sight: Hermione Granger, riding a yellow bicycle across the stone floors of Hogwarts. She pedaled a lap around the hall, passing in front of the head table at one point, before riding partway down the center aisle to stop next to where her friends were sitting. "I checked," she declared to the silent hall. "Bicycles aren't on the banned item list at Hogwarts." "Miss Granger," McGonagall shouted, "have you no concern for your safety riding that thing?" "I was wearing a helmet," Hermione replied with a smile as she doffed the protective headgear. "I was fine." Hermione ended up in detention for that stunt. Her first detention, actually, across all of their loops. Professor McGonagall was quite impressed that I had transfigured the bicycle, Hermione said later on. "It's a surprisingly complicated contraption, and I had to make all of the little mechanical parts just the right size. And don't get me started on the gear shift." Soon enough, Norbert the baby dragon came and went, and so did exams. And on the night that Quirrell went to steal the stone, Harry went out past curfew to wait for him, taking with him a bar of gold that he'd transmuted using the stone. He could feel in his scar the frustration that Quirrell faced at each pranked obstacle. Based on the sensations Harry felt, he figured that it took Voldemort hours to figure out how to defeat the Go board, and nearly an hour to solve Hermione's logic puzzle. And immediately after, an intense burning spread through his skull as Quirrellmort no doubt read his note. It was less than 5 minutes later that the door to the corridor banged open, revealing a furious Professor Quirrell, though it appeared that Voldemort was fully in control. "Sorry, Tommy," Harry said mockingly. "I got it first, but I can give you some gold if you'd like." Voldemort's response was predictable: "Avada Kedavra." Harry went out laughing as the world shattered. Chapter 17. 3 Quiet Years. "Has anyone seen a toad?" Hermione asked. "I mean, really, I've asked that so many times, and I wonder, has anyone ever really seen a toad? Can toads truly be seen?" "Are you okay?" Neville asked, sounding concerned. Harry was a bit concerned too. His best female friend was not one for going on confused philosophical tangents. "I may have been sampling some of the fire whiskey at the end-of-term party last night," Hermione admitted, starting to sound more sober even as she sat herself down. "You got drunk? You, Hermione?" Harry questioned. It seemed out of character for the girl who, even now, remained the stickler for the rules among them. "I knew what Harry was planning," she said, "and I thought it would be a good way to experience drunkenness without having to deal with any of the consequences." Hermione blushed a bit in embarrassment. "I'm not sure I'm ever going to do that again. I think I kissed Oliver Wood." You, Ron said, and Oliver would. I know, Hermione replied, and I never want to think about it again. New rule, Neville declared. What happens in Loop 8 stays in Loop 8. Agreed, said Harry. Pranking Voldemort into killing me will earn me infinite Marauder points with my dad in the afterlife if I ever manage to reach it. But I'm not him. I'm not a prankster at heart like he was. And I'm not my brothers, Ron concurred. And I don't think practical jokes come naturally to Nev or Myoni either. The two in question shook their heads. We had our fun, Hermione said, but never again. What do we do now, though? Asked Harry. First things first, let's make a list of every recurring task we need to take care of, Hermione suggested. Well, said Neville, as soon as possible, we need to reveal Scabbers. He nodded to the rat in question, whom Ron had already spelled to sleep and put in a silencing bubble, just in case. The stone theft in January or February. Norbert after Easter, Ron continued. Then our long night in June, just in case Quirrell comes for us. He never has, Hermione pointed out. It's tradition by this point, Harry countered. And then we need to send the stone back with Hedwig. I'll need to grab the diary as soon as Lucius Malfoy gives it to Ginny, Ron said. I don't want it getting its claws into her at all this time around, and we'll toss it into the chamber as soon as school starts back up. That mostly takes care of second year, Hermione said, although we should still go and take out the basilisk so we can destroy the diary. That means making Hedwig's gear at some point, said Neville, as well as getting ourselves in good enough physical condition for that battle. Since Sirius will be free, I can get the locket from Grimmauld Place that Christmas or summer, Harry said, and our third year should be problem-free. As far as we know, we haven't lived through it yet. And then there's Lockhart, Hermione snarled. Don't forget about him, the obliviating bastard. We'll need to reveal his true, slimy, greedy, fame-hungry self for all the world to see. Merlin, Hermione, Ron said. You really hate him. Of all our enemies, the Basilisk and Dementors are mostly mindless, and Voldemort, horrible as he is, never pretended to be otherwise. But Lockhart is evil under a pretty face, and he tried to take my mind. My mind. Which is, and always has been, and always will be the part of myself I value most. Hermione took a deep breath. Moving on, she said. That covers all of our old problems. On the academic front, we're most of the way through the Newt curriculum, even if we took the last year off. I think we can get to 12 Newts by the end of our second year of this loop, especially given that we shouldn't have too many distractions. 12 Newts, said Neville. That's impressive, and basically unheard of. I just have to wonder, are we going to try human transfiguration? If we were going to do it, first year would be the best time, Ron opined, since we wouldn't have invested much time in the loop if we had to reset due to something going wrong. Speaking of human transfiguration, we could become animagi, Harry pointed out. It's magic, so if we complete the process once, it should carry over, right? Right, Hermione confirmed. It's a good idea and a useful skill. Let's do it at some point. What about the Horcruxes? Neville asked. We know that Voldemort made two, the diary and the locket. But if we manage to destroy both of them, does that make him mortal again? I'm not sure, Harry admitted. Arithmancy would tell you, insofar as I can stomach performing arithmancy on murder magic and split souls, that two Horcruxes for a three-part soul would be a fairly balanced configuration. But what? Ron asked. But 3 is far from the only magical number, Harry said. 7 is 1, 13 is 1, and larger numbers have their own magical properties, and the main soul piece may or may not count. And that's all assuming that Voldemort tried to do arithmancy on his own soul, and didn't just go for as many as he could make. How much could a soul even be split? Neville asked. I'm not sure that's a question I want answered, Hermione said. Even talking about this makes me feel dirty. It makes all of us feel dirty, Ron replied, but we have to do it. Do we? Neville asked. We could make another fake deduction chain once Harry meets Creature and pawn it off on Dumbledore. And would he tell a bunch of children what he discovered about the incredibly dark necromantic magic? Harry countered. No, it has to be us, because nobody else can remember across the loops and make progress toward the ultimate goal. How do we know that defeating Voldemort will even end the loop? Hermione asked. I mean, we've all been operating under that assumption since it was Voldemort who started it, but there's no reason to think that's true. We don't, Ron admitted, but we have to have hope. We have to have an end purpose, something to give these loops meaning. Because without hope, without purpose, without meaning, we'll be stuck pranking Voldemort into murdering us from now until we lose our sanity. Besides, Harry pointed out, if we kill Voldemort, the threats to our lives will probably go down dramatically, giving us more time to figure out how to end the loop. There is one more thing we need to decide right now, Neville said. What house are we going to be in this time? I think we've gotten most of what we need out of Ravenclaw, said Ron. I don't want to go back there again. Fair enough, Hermione agreed. And we know how to get back in if we need access to their library again. I'm also going to veto Gryffindor. We've spent more than enough time there, and I want to try something new since we can. I suppose Hufflepuff wouldn't be bad, Neville mused. I know I said no to it before, said Har softly, but what about Slytherin? Slytherin, Ron questioned. Why? Why would you want to spend 3 or more years with Draco Malfoy? Because not every Slytherin is Draco Malfoy, Harry said. Some of them are like Regulus Black. And for him, I'd like to give the House of Green a try if the rest of you are willing. A muggle born in Slytherin, the Sorting Hat questioned when Hermione brought up the group's choice. That will certainly shake things up. Don't tell me that you subscribe to blood prejudice, Sorting Hat, Hermione retorted. Not at all, the Hat replied. I have sat upon nearly 100,000 11-year-old heads, and I know better than to claim that one kind of blood is superior to another. But I rarely send a muggle-born to Slytherin for the simple reason that the Slytherin house culture would eat them alive. And my first duty is to the students. But I'm not 11, not magically, not mentally, and I'll have my friends with me. You're right. And I can see that your friend Mr. Potter once said that I wanted to send him to Slytherin. I have no doubt he will be able to thrive there, as will you all, for your time in the loop has forced all of you to learn cunning. And your ambition is grand, to defeat Voldemort and to discover the secret of one of the greatest feats of magic to which I have ever borne witness. So you'll send us to Slytherin, all of us. I will. And no, I won't split you four up now or ever. It's clear how much it would hurt you to do so. Few people get to experience being in all four houses, so enjoy your time in Slytherin. The great hall was silent, as a muggle-born girl walked confidently to take her seat among the house of blood purity. When a Longbottom, a Weasley, and Harry Potter himself followed her, their shock only grew. Well, Harry muttered so only his friends could hear. As pranks go, this might just top killing a troll with juggling balls. Before entering Slytherin House, Harry had no idea that 11-year-olds were capable of political maneuvering. And yet, by the end of their first week at Hogwarts, Draco Malfoy was able to amass a major following that included students of all 7 years, simply by leveraging his father's name and influence. It explained a lot about why the boy acted so entitled, if he was able to get 7th years to bend to his every whim so easily. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville formed a clique of 4, and they resisted any and all attempts by the larger factions in Slytherin to intimidate them or secure their allegiance. They had no use for petty teenage politics, not when they'd be resetting time sooner or later, nor for threats, not when they had newt-level magic under their belts and had killed a basilisk. Neville's grandmother sent him a strongly worded letter questioning his sorting. Harry knew that she was extraordinarily pleased with Neville being a Gryffindor and moderately happy when he was a Ravenclaw. Slytherin, however, was apparently the house of dark wizards, and therefore a dishonor to his parents. Neville managed to change her mind somehow, or at least reach a truce. The Weasleys, at least, were a bit more accepting, for Percy admitted that he was nearly sorted Slytherin but forced the hat to place him in Gryffindor. The twins increased their pranking of Ron for a few weeks, but otherwise didn't seem to mind, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley loved all their children unconditionally. Professor Snape was still rude to Harry in potions, but didn't take points from his own house. Instead, he just sneered at Harry whenever he got a question right or brewed a near-perfect potion. They still went through their first-year to-do list. The revelation of Ron's pet rat as Peter Pettigrew largely distracted people from the surprising sortings, and Sirius Black's first letter to Harry post-trial included a reassurance that he didn't judge Harry for his house. Harry smiled at reading that, even across timelines, his godfather kept his promises. On Halloween, Harry still skipped the feast with his friends due to being in mourning and defeated the troll. He used the usual method, not juggling balls. However, he kept up on his juggling practice because he had worked hard to learn how to do it. Their status as Slytherin semi-outcasts meant that few eyes were upon them, allowing them to easily steal the stone. They did not keep it under Ron's mattress out of fear that Draco might try to steal it, but instead threw it into an abandoned classroom deep in the dungeons for the rest of the year. Hagrid, unfortunately, succumbed to house prejudices and wasn't nearly as friendly to Harry as in other loops, necessitating another approach to handle Norbert. Their ultimate solution involved spying on the hut under Harry's invisibility cloak and writing an anonymous note to Headmaster Dumbledore. The headmaster somehow managed to convince his loyal groundskeeper to give up the dragon and smoothed over any legal issues. "That was easier than our usual," Hermione said. "But the smuggling is more fun," Ron countered with a smirk. On the night of their last exams, Quirrell fled without the stone, and Harry sent it back to the Flamels as usual. Sirius had promised to come visit Harry at Privet Drive. All was well. On their way to second year, Harry was surprised to see that Hermione had bought all of Lockhart's books this time. "I'm going to tear through every detail in these books," Hermione vowed. "I'm going to find every untruth, every impossibility, every inconsistency. I'm going to show to the world that Gilderoy Lockhart is a fraud." Now that they knew the truth, they saw Professor Lockhart no longer as hilariously incompetent, but as a danger as real to them as Quirrell was. At least they didn't have to worry about the chamber opening unless Harry opened it, nor the basilisk until they chose to fight it. The armor and talons that the four friends built for Hedwig were even better than their previous iterations, and the owl was ready to go take out the giant snake again. The wizards and witch, however, were not, and they spent hours upon hours every week practicing group fighting in the deep dungeons. They made sure to keep their activities far from Lockhart's notice, at least until Hermione could finish compiling her fraud report. The quartet made sure that Luna's social situation remained as good as possible. The girl admitted that she didn't think she could handle being a Slytherin, but that should they go to Hufflepuff or Gryffindor, she would join them. Thankfully, the boy who lived to be a Slytherin had a major intimidation factor that kept the worst of the bullying off of their friend. Just before Christmas, the time travelers delved into the chamber, making extra sure that they weren't followed this time. With experience, their battle plan went even better than the last time, with Hermione being the one to strike the killing blow, finally getting revenge for her horrible death so many loops ago. Ron got some revenge of his own, impaling Tom Riddle's diary on one of the basilisk's fangs. Luna was able to confirm that the foulness she had sensed in the diary before was no longer. At Christmas, Harry visited Grimmauld Place, met Creature, and discovered the locket. As before, Sirius got closure for his brother and Harry retrieved the second Horcrux. Harry made a solemn promise to the Black Elf to complete the task and to return the destroyed locket to him, so Creature allowed him to take the locket back to Hogwarts. Before destroying it, Hermione noted that it wasn't just any old heirloom. I think this is Salazar Slytherin's locket, Hermione revealed. There's a portrait of him in the Slytherin common room, a non-moving one, where he's wearing this. We still need to destroy it, Luna insisted. This is definitely like the diary was. Foul, disgusting, horrible. I agree, said Harry. Still, this tells us something about Tom Riddle, that he was willing to sully a 1,000-year-old artifact of immense historical significance with a piece of his putrid soul. Even the basilisk fang bounced off the lockets outside, which made them worried. What if the locket has to be opened? Ron suggested. Maybe with Parseltongue, Harry added, since it's Slytherin's. Focusing on the image of a snake, he hissed the word open, which caused the locket to pop open, revealing a shadowy figure. Harry Potter, it said as his friends backed away, Luna curling into a ball in fear and horror. I have seen your heart, and it is mine. Trapped, hopeless, doomed to repeat his years endlessly, without family, ever alone, never to know friendship beyond what the loops have forced upon you. The locket's taunts were cut off by a sudden scream, for Neville had managed to grab a basilisk fang and thrust it into the locket's heart. Harry sat on the chamber's floor for a few minutes, recovering from the magical and mental ordeal that the Horcrux had put him through. It was wrong, you know, Ron said. We will get out of this. And you're never, ever alone, Hermione added, because we're your family. And we always will be, Neville finished, even when the loops are a distant memory. Luna sat up from where she had gone nearly catatonic. That was horrible, she said, but it's gone. Until next loop, Harry muttered pessimistically. Next loop, Ron assured him. Someone else will do it, and will fang it before it can say 5 words. How did it know about the loops, though? Neville wondered. What about the time for Delius? Our boggarts were of fears we made in previous loops, Hermione suggested. It might be similar to that. Second year ended with Hermione confronting Lockhart on his fraud, provoking the professor into casting Obliviate. Hermione shielded herself easily and hauled Lockhart to Dumbledore's office, where she was able to present her theory that he stole his stories using the professor's instinctive reaction of wiping her memory as evidence. He was arrested a few weeks later and sent to Azkaban. Harry got to experience a wonderful summer away from the Dursleys, spending time with all of his friends. The ride back to school was also far better without any Dementors. Professor Snape had refused to let Hermione take all 5 classes, though Harry didn't know whether it was spite at one of Harry's friends or because he thought that giving a 13-year-old a time machine was an idiotic idea. Still, the friends were able to enjoy a year of classes, including a competent defense teacher in Remus Lupin. At Christmas that year, Hermione declared that they were at Newt level or beyond in all 12 of their classes, which was confirmed by practice Newts taken over the course of a few months. The quartet decided to take the rest of the year to focus on non-academic pursuits. Harry focused on his flute playing for the first time in a while. Ron learned a Japanese chess variant called shogi. Hermione decided to write a novel, and Neville transfigured himself a sword and figured out how to use it. The year ended, however, on 2 sour notes. The first was the leak by someone, likely Professor Snape, that Remus was a werewolf. The second was an ominous prophecy from the mouth of Sybil Trelawney. It will happen tonight. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servantha's been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant shall break free and set forth to rejoin his master. The Dark Lord shall rise from the grave, greater and more terrible than ever before. Tonight, before midnight, the servant shall set forth to rejoin his master. Chapter 18. 2 Tournaments. I can't wait for what's coming this summer, Ron said excitedly as they rode back to Hogwarts at the end of their first year. What's coming? Hermione asked. It's the Quidditch World Cup, Ron exclaimed. It only happens every 4 years, and wizards from all around the world come to watch it. The last one was before we started Hogwarts, and this year Britain has been chosen to host it. We should all go together, Harry said. "I've only seen a few pro Quidditch matches, and well, they're so much better than the stuff that's played at Hogwarts." "You know that I'm not a huge Quidditch fan, Harry," Hermione said. "But it will be the two best teams in the world," Ron argued. "I'll consider it," Hermione relented. "If nothing else, as you said, there are people from all over the world coming. It would be interesting to see." "I might come," said Neville. "Not sure if my Gran will want to go, though, or let me go. She still sees me as the same kid who couldn't keep track of his pet toad on the express." "You should stand up for yourself," Harry urged him. "Not worth it," Neville replied. "At least not for Quidditch. I only really go to watch you play, Harry." Soon enough, the Hogwarts Express came to a stop at platform 9¾ in London. Harry hefted his trunk as he followed his friends out of their compartment and onto the crowded platform. It took a few minutes for Harry to spot the familiar face of his godfather toward the left side of the platform, near the barrier to King's Cross. "Sirius!" Harry shouted excitedly, getting the man's attention. "Hey, kid!" Sirius yelled back, making his way toward where Harry was through the thick assembly of parents and students. "How was your school year?" "It was great," Harry said, "and quiet, which is always nice." "Oh, come on," Sirius needled him. "Surely something interesting happened." "Well, Moony was a good defense professor," Harry replied, "and Malfoy kicked up a fuss after he baited a hippogriff and got scratched for it, but otherwise it was quiet. No traitor hiding as my best friend's pet, no mountain troll invasion, no incompetent nincompoop turning out to be an obliviating fraud, and no need to secretly deal with alchemical artifacts or ancient murder snakes or anything like that." Despite what Sirius thought, a boring school year was a rare treat for Harry. "Well, this summer should be more exciting," Sirius said. "World Cup?" Harry asked, smiling. "World Cup," Sirius agreed as they passed through the barrier to the Muggle side of King's Cross. "I got us tickets, top box." Moony too, though after Snivellus spilled on his furry little problem, he might not want to go out in public. Harry knew that Snape cared for his mother and that he was loyal to the light. It still didn't make his current head of house any less of a bastard. "Even though I got sorted Slytherin," Harry grumbled, "Snape still can't look past my hair and glasses to stop hating me." The Godfather-Godson duo continued their familiar refrain of Snape hatred as they rode Sirius's motorbike through the streets of London, arriving soon enough at the doorstep of 12 Grimmauld Place. The black ancestral townhouse was now the most heavily warded building in Britain outside of Hogwarts, a necessary condition for Dumbledore to permit Harry to live there. Or rather, Sirius's response to Dumbledore's assertion that Harry was only safe at Privet Drive was to throw a quarter of the Black Fortune at Britain's best ward masters, and then take in Harry anyway. That evening, Harry and Sirius had a meal together, one prepared by Creature, who was far less surly since the Horcrux locket had been destroyed. Most people would take such a thing for granted, but Harry never, ever would. The first week of the holidays were occupied by Harry completing his summer homework. It wasn't exactly challenging for a Newt-level student, but it still took some time, and Hermione wouldn't accept any excuses for the failure to get his schoolwork done as soon as he could. After that week, though, Harry was able to have some fun. He and Sirius went out and enjoyed the best sights of the magical world and the Muggle world, including attending some of the preliminary matches of the Quidditch World Cup. Only a strange dream of a murderous, deformed baby and the resulting scar pain caused Harry distress, but even that was soon forgotten. If it was a real vision like the ones he'd had back when Voldemort got the stone, then they would find out in due time. Watching the World Cup, Harry was particularly impressed by the Bulgarian team. Even if their chaser line was mediocre at a professional level, their seeker was exceptional. Extraordinary, even. Victor Krum, a 17-year-old wunderkind, had already set several speed records and had only a single failed snitch catch in the dozens of games he'd played since going pro. and that, supposedly, was due to one of his teammates accidentally running into him in the middle of chasing the snitch. Harry had a small birthday party hosted by the Weasleys, with Hermione, Neville, and Luna in attendance. Harry was glad to see all of them. Even Ginny, who remained a boy who lived fangirl, but had fared far better this time around, without her first year ruined by Tom Riddle possessing her. Soon after that, August came, and with it, the Quidditch Cup final. Sirius and Harry portkeyed into the campground that morning. Harry was quite disgusted by the cavalier repeated obliviation of the Muggle campsite manager, but there was little he could do about it now. Hermione had come with the Weasleys for the World Cup. Neville had ended up deciding not to bother. After helping Sirius set up their tent, which was bigger on the inside, Harry had gone to spend time with his friends exploring the massive campground, seeing the eclectic mass of people, buying cool souvenirs from a dozen different vendors, and just enjoying the atmosphere as much as he could. When it came time for the game, Harry was pleased that the Weasleys had secured seats in the top box after Mr. Weasley had done some favor for the head of magical games and sports. He was, however, displeased to see his eternal bane and current housemate, Draco Malfoy, was also in attendance. The mascot displays were interesting. The leprechauns were kind of fun, even if Harry and his friends all knew that the gold they made was fake. The Vila made the boys almost leap out of the top box. Sirius in particular was affected heavily, while Harry was only affected moderately. And after that, the game began. For being the pinnacle of professional Quidditch, Harry found the game to be rather boring. It was certainly one-sided, with the Bulgarian chasers scoring only a single goal against the unstoppable Irish defence. And when Victor Crumb made a superb catch to end the game with a Bulgarian defeat, Harry was simply glad to see the embarrassment of a game come to an end. That night, Harry, Ron, and Hermione stayed up a bit late to enjoy the post-match party atmosphere, but went to bed well before midnight. Of course, they didn't get to sleep for long, because a riot started, not caused by rowdy sports fans, but by rowdy Death Eaters. Even though they were subject to the trace, all three of them kept their wands out. They would not let themselves get hurt or killed just to obey the unreasonable restriction on underage sorcery. Ultimately, none of them got hurt, just accosted by an angry Bartemius Crouch, who decided to accuse them of casting the Dark Mark. It turned out to be Crouch's house elf, Winky, who had somehow gotten a hold of Ginny's wand, or so the ministry officials present had concluded. Harry, Ron, and Hermione weren't so sure. House elves had no need of wands to do magic, nor would one as seemingly devoted as Winky act without her master's permission. Once he was home safely, Harry called Darby and asked him to keep an eye out for the elf who had been framed and unjustly fired. Given everything that had happened during the summer, Harry wasn't looking forward to what new challenges he would have to face in the school year. The weather for the trip to their first fourth year at Hogwarts was rainy and miserable. Harry didn't envy the first years who had to cross the lake in such a downpour. Ron managed to figure out how to use a shield charm as a makeshift umbrella, but that didn't stop their feet and lower legs from being muddied on the path to the carriages. After the sorting, Headmaster Dumbledore delivered two announcements. The first was the identity of the new defense against the dark arts professor, one Alastor Moody. Ron told them how Moody was one of the best and most feared Aurors during the war against Voldemort. He had taken down numerous high-profile names among the Death Eaters and paid a heavy price for it in scars and lost body parts. Still, Harry looked forward to learning from such an experienced fighter, even if his legendary paranoia meant that Harry and his friends would have to be more circumspect than usual about their true abilities. The second announcement was that Quidditch had been cancelled in favor of an international scholastic competition, the Triwizard Tournament. Though it had not been run in years due to its death toll, the tournament was being revived with some safeguards, including an adults-only requirement for competitors. Harry knew that he and his friends, despite having far more life experience and lived years than any other student in the school, would not qualify because their magic remained underage. And that was even if they wanted to enter the historically deadly competition in the first place. Their classes were certainly interesting. In care of magical creatures, Hagrid had decided to have students raise some creatures called blast-ended scroots. Now, seeing as all four of them had reached Newt level in book knowledge in this class, they should have been able to recognize any creature on the curriculum. Hermione probably knew the ins and outs of every creature that had been spotted even once in wizarding history. And yes, this included creatures only discussed in the Quibbler. Not one of them had any idea what a scroot was or where it came from. The scroots, though, were far from the worst thing that they had to deal with. Moody had opened his class with a demonstration of the unforgivable curses, 3 dark magic spells that would send anyone who used them on humans to Azkaban immediately. Though Moody only used them on spiders, it still raised questions of how he had learned these spells and gained such proficiency in them in the first place. Then Moody proceeded to use the Imperius, the mind control curse, on the students themselves. Though he offered an out if anybody wanted one, peer pressure and Moody's glare kept all of the students in the classroom as, one by one, they faced down the most insidious of the unforgivables and did the most ridiculous things. Harry, however, was able to throw the curse off within 10 seconds, rejecting the perfect bliss it offered to those who obeyed in favor of maintaining control of himself. His friends, while they didn't do quite as well, were also able to resist it and to throw it off eventually. Even outside of classes, Moody certainly put them mad in the name Mad-Eye. When Malfoy had tried to curse Harry in the back, his friends hadn't had to intervene. Moody had come in, transmogrified the light-haired bully into an even lighter-haired ferret, and proceeded to bounce the ferret off the floor and ceiling. Though Professor McGonagall stopped him, Malfoy certainly learned his lesson for once. And the fact that a teacher was actually willing to intervene against Malfoy, for once endeared Moody to Harry a little. The time-traveling quartet also took the time to finish a project they'd been working on since the start of their 3rd year, this loop. After months of studying, practice, and keeping mandrake leaves stuck to the roofs of their mouths, they had achieved the animagus transformation. Harry became a soaring hawk, reflecting his skill in the skies. Ron's form was a red-furred terrier, a hunter and a loyal friend. Hermione became a lioness, fierce and powerful and a true queen, and Neville transformed into a black bear, fierce and protective. 2 months of speculation and anticipation about the tournament passed quickly enough, and before Harry knew it, it was the penultimate day of October, upon which the 2 guest schools were scheduled to arrive. The entire student body stood outside as they waited for the arrivals. Beauxbatons, based in southern France, but serving most of southern and western Europe as well, was the first to arrive, coming in a carriage the size of a large house, pulled by elephant-sized winged horses. The school's headmistress, Madame Maxime, was also large, rivaling Hagrid for the largest person Harry had ever met. The school's students, whose light blue attire was insufficiently warm for a Scottish autumn, quickly filed into the heated interior of the castle. Durmstrang, placed somewhere in Central Europe and serving much of the middle and eastern parts of the continent, was a school known for its focus on the dark arts and its refusal to admit Muggle-borns. Nevertheless, their arrival via underwater sailing ship received a warm welcome due to the presence of Victor Krum as their star student. The headmaster, Igor Karkaroff, was someone that they knew from some deep research in previous loops to be a Death Eater, let free in exchange for naming and testifying against dozens of his comrades. When the Hogwarts students got back inside for the welcome feast, the Durmstrang students were already at the Slytherin table, though not near where Harry and his friends usually sat, and the Ravenclaw table was hosting the students of Beauxbatons. Thankfully, the Longhouse tables had more than enough room to accommodate the few additional students from each visiting school. Draco Malfoy had been Slytherin's seeker since their 2nd year due to Snape's favoritism and the purchase of 7 Nimbus 2001 brooms. even though Harry had beaten him to the snitch during tryouts both second and third year. He tried to use his position to get the attention of Victor Crumb, but the World Cup seeker was not particularly impressed. Harry, though he wanted to meet Crumb, decided that he had a whole year to make the skilled seeker's acquaintance, and so merely enjoyed the additional variety of foods provided for their foreign guests. After dinner, Mr. Filch brought in a jeweled box which contained the Goblet of Fire, a magical artifact which had been enchanted to select the champions for each school. The visual of the wooden cup containing blue flames without itself burning was suitably dramatic for the start of the tournament. Dumbledore placed the goblet within an age line, a simple spell which temporarily kept magically underage individuals out of a certain area. The quartet had first come across the spell in their research when Neville had read about it, and wondered why it hadn't been used to keep kids out of the third-floor corridor. Further research had shown that the spell was not easy to perform and could only last a week at most. Still, it was perfect for the purpose of keeping eager students away from the goblet. The next day, Halloween, proved to be an entertaining one. In between classes, students would go to submit their names for consideration by the Goblet of Fire. Some made a big show of it, even if it just involved stepping over a circle and dropping a piece of paper into the goblet. Others, like Hufflepuff's Cedric Diggory, didn't make as big a deal out of it. And of course, some underage students tried to put their names in age line or no age line. Fred and George's attempt using an aging potion proved to be particularly hilarious, even if it was destined to fail. Aging potions, after all, merely perform cosmetic alterations. To affect the nature of one's magic would probably require a difficult alchemical concoction if it were possible at all. "Who do you think will be the champions?" Harry asked as they were finishing up their desserts, awaiting the Goblet of Fire's decision. "For Hogwarts, my vote is Angelina Johnson," Ron said. "From what I remember, none of Ravenclaw's 3 years above us are that powerful or particularly skilled in their practical spellwork, and I know that Johnson is near the top of her class." "I think Diggory," Neville said. "The Hufflepuff, him?" Ron asked. "Really?" "Professor Sprout is always signing his praises," Neville said. "Not to mention he had quite the competitive spirit whenever I faced him in Quidditch," Harry said. "I would have loved to have faced him as a Slytherin," he muttered bitterly. "Anyway, I could definitely see Diggory being the champion." "Both are good," Hermione equivocated. "I think it's definitely Crumb for Durmstrang, though." "Absolutely," Ron agreed. "Crumb for the win." "Karkaroff is certainly favoring him," Neville noted. "And we know from the World Cup that he's competitive." "Just being good at seeking doesn't make you good at spellwork," Harry pointed out. "And celebrity doesn't equal competence. I would know." "You're very competent," Hermione said. "But I wasn't always," Harry reminded her. "As for Beauxbatons, what do we really know about those students? Do we even know any of their names?" "There's the one girl who might be part Vila," Ron said. "But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm not going to pass any judgments." Suddenly, the lights in the great hall dimmed, and Dumbledore's voice sounded over the student body, instantly silencing them. "The Goblet of Fire is almost ready," he declared. "I estimate it will take about 1 more minute to make its decision." The tension in the hall was palpable. Who would be chosen? Who would be the one to gain glory for Hogwarts, for Beauxbatons, for Durmstrang? "The champion for Durmstrang," Dumbledore said, as he caught the first slip to come out of the goblet, "will be Victor Crumb." The hall erupted into wild cheers. Everyone was excited to see the world-famous Quidditch star performing in another arena. "The champion for Beauxbatons will be Fleur de Lacquer." It was the girl that Ron had mentioned earlier as possibly being part Vila. Harry certainly agreed that she was beautiful, though whether she was preternaturally so, he couldn't say. Some of the Beauxbaton students were outright bawling over not being chosen, which, perhaps, was the reason why they weren't chosen in the first place if they couldn't even face rejection. "The champion for Hogwarts will be Cedric Diggory. I was right after all, Neville muttered, so that only his three friends could hear him. Ron nodded in acknowledgement. It should be interesting to see how this plays out, Harry said, and it should be another quiet year for. The goblet flared higher than ever before and spat out a fourth name. Harry Potter.